Hey friends, tonight we're drifting into one of the strangest, richest, and most unexpected corners of world history. Not dragons, not warrior kings, not some epic prophecy carved in stone. No, tonight we're talking about economics. Please don't panic. I promise it's the interesting kind. This is the story of how the wealthiest empire on Earth, a civilization that once controlled nearly a third of all global wealth, began to crumble. Not from sword or plague or invasion, but over a flower. Not a majestic flower, not a sacred mystical lotus glowing under moonlight. A regular little plant, something fragile enough to crush between your fingers, and yet strong enough to derail empires, redraw maps, and send nations into war. Before we dive deeper, take a moment, only if you feel like it, to like this video and subscribe. But seriously, no pressure. If sleep storytelling isn't your thing, YouTube has plenty of screaming speedrun videos and conspiracy theories about lizard people politicians you can go watch instead. If you are staying, though, hello, you're in good company. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Somehow, it's always 2:17 a.m. for someone who just told themselves they'd go to bed early, for real this time. Now, ease back, dim those lights. Turn on a fan for that soft white noise breeze. Tuck your blanket tight around your feet, just in case a ghost from the Qing treasury tries to come collect unpaid taxes. They probably won't. Probably. Take a slow breath. And another. Because tonight we're stepping into a world of silk and silver, palaces and porcelain, royal pride and global greed. A world where foreign kings once bowed, where markets trembled, and where a single delicate flower, traded, smoked, fought over, and smuggled across oceans, slowly cracked the foundation of a mighty empire. Was it inevitable? Was it arrogance? Was it addiction? Or just one of history's cruel jokes, a reminder that even the strongest can fall to the smallest things? Let's drift there together. To the dawn of the 1700s, to the tea houses and jade courts, to merchant ships rolling through fog-covered seas, to whispered deals, secret cargoes, and a future no one could imagine. Get comfortable. Breathe gently. And as sleep begins to settle in your bones, let history do what it does best. Remind us how strange, fragile, and fascinating the world truly is. Tonight we sail, not with pirates, but with emperors, merchants, smugglers, dreamers, and the quiet tide of fate itself. This is where our story begins. Chapter 1. Qing Dynasty. Close your eyes. Let your breathing slow, and allow your imagination to travel back in time. To the early 1700s, when the world's most powerful empire stood at the height of its glory. This is the Qing Dynasty. Picture an empire stretching across mountains dusted with snow, endless deserts, and fertile river valleys shimmering in the soft light of dawn. From the icy grasslands of Mongolia to the rich rice terraces of southern China, the land seems to breathe beneath a calm morning mist. Villages hum with quiet life, great cities rise like jewels, and ancient walls snake across hills like a protective dragon, resting after centuries of watchfulness. This is not just a kingdom, not merely a nation. It is the heart of global wealth, ruling nearly 1/3 of the entire world's economy. Imagine the Forbidden City at sunrise, red walls glowing gently, golden roofs catching the first beams of light. Beyond the palace gates, courtiers move silently across polished stone, silk robes whispering like wind across water. Inside the Hall of Supreme Harmony sits the Son of Heaven, the Emperor, a figure believed not simply to rule by law, but by cosmic destiny, guardian of balance between heaven and earth. Now, listen. In the stillness, you can almost hear the soft shuffle of foreign envoys arriving. Men from distant kingdoms, Europe, Persia, Southeast Asia, each wearing unfamiliar robes and speaking languages strange to local ears. They step forward slowly, carefully, nervously. For here, in the Middle Kingdom, they are not equals. They are guests in the world's wealthiest court, hoping merely to be granted the privilege of trade. Some bow deeply, others kneel, and many perform the kowtow, lowering their foreheads to the floor again and again to show respect to the emperor who needs nothing from them. Because China at this moment believes itself perfectly complete. Tea, porcelain, silk, jade, treasures coveted across oceans flow outward, but little is desired in return. The world comes here to buy, the world comes here to admire, and the world comes here because this empire has something everyone wants, yet does not need to barter for anything in return. Now, imagine the treasury, silver stacked like mountains, vaults overflowing, merchants bustling through marketplaces, rich with spices, silk banners, and ornate ceramics. Coastal ports buzz with life, but always under the watchful eye of imperial authority. One trade port for foreigners, strict rules, strict controls. China sets the terms, the world listens. From above, the empire looks peaceful, rivers glistening, scholars studying in quiet garden pavilions, farmers tending fields that feed millions. Art and literature flourish, palaces expand, temples echo with chants. The emperor's banners fly proudly over all. And yet, beneath this calm surface is a truth we now see clearly with the gift of hindsight. Empire that believes itself too strong to ever fall is often the one that falls the hardest. Forests whisper with the movement of nomadic tribes at the borders. Internal factions stir in silence. Foreign empires watch, calculating, waiting. In this moment of splendor, no one imagines the storm that will one day come, sparked, unbelievably, by a simple flower. A commodity so delicate, yet so powerful, that it will unravel centuries-old power dynamics and bring this mighty empire to its knees. But that story comes later. For now, rest in this moment. The Qing dynasty at sunrise. An empire rich beyond imagining, confident, serene, and unaware that this golden age stands at the brink of a transformation no one could foresee. Breathe deeply. Let the past drift like incense smoke through your mind. And when you're ready, we'll continue our journey through history's quiet wonders. Chapter 2. The Hustle and Bustle of Canton Harbor, 1800. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mildly Interesting History. Tonight we dive into a scene that's a bit more crowded than your morning commute. Canton Harbor in the year 1800, where the air is thick with the scent of spices, the cries of merchants, and maybe just a whiff of desperation. Picture it, a bustling port where the ships of the world are unloading their most fragrant goods. The kind of smell that would make your average apothecary swoon and faint, like they just caught sight of an amazing sale on essential oils. But before we sail gently into the depths of history, I invite you to do the usual. Grab your favorite soft blanket, maybe dim the lights a bit, because who needs light when you could be peacefully drifting off? Oh, and if you enjoy what you hear, do consider subscribing and giving us a thumbs up. But only if you feel inspired. No pressure in the 1800s, after all. Who needs that kind of stress? Now, let's think about this. What was life like for a European merchant who found themselves confined to a cramped little trading factory just outside the walls of Canton? For starters, what was it like waking up every day knowing you might miss your morning tea because you couldn't even escape to find a proper pot? Did they wear pajamas made from the world's softest burlap? Or was that simply a myth passed down through the ages? Did they ever find time to daydream about an actual vacation instead of just watching the same waves roll in and out like a terrible episode of a reality show? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1800, surrounded by the aroma of transported spices, all while being scrutinized by stern-faced Chinese officials. You're officially part of the world's richest empire, but don't let that go to your head. You are still confined in an area that sounds less like a trade hub and more like a really well-planned prison system designed specifically to limit your food options and personal freedoms. Welcome to the early 19th century delight of Canton. Let's talk about the marketplace, shall we? The hustle and bustle is unlike anything you've ever experienced. Imagine the sound of hundreds of merchants bickering over prices, louder than a classroom of toddlers when you promised them cookies. Spices, silks, and curios flit around in a vivid kaleidoscope of color. It's like a 3D movie without the glasses. Sounds amazing, right? Except those merchants are sweating in their fine wool trousers, praying the weight of their goods doesn't crush their dreams of ever moving back to Europe. And what were those goods, you ask? Spices, silks, exotic animals that, quite frankly, deserve a much better life than being carted around in enormous crates. You'd think the merchants were more interested in catering to the emperor's even more finicky palate than checking their inventory. Did they spend their evenings writing despairing diary entries? Dear Diary, today I was nearly crushed by an elephant while trying to negotiate the price of duck sauce. Sincerely, still not getting paid enough for this job. Meanwhile, the stern Chinese officials, clad in splendid silks and displaying expressions so serious, it's as if they've just discovered their favorite teapot chipped. Carefully watch each transaction. Imagine them standing at the dock with their arms crossed, scrutinizing Europeans like an 8-year-old eyeing a carton of milk after it's been left out too long, deeply suspicious and yet slightly intrigued. As a European merchant, your role here is starkly clear. Offload your goods, deeply admire the artistry of the local craftsmen, and pray no one finds out that your ability to haggle is about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. But of course, being confined in such tight spaces comes with its own quirks. You suddenly become an aficionado of bad jokes. Why did the spice trader go broke? Because he couldn't make sense out of his scents. The sea breezes? Oh, they're wonderful and salty, the kind that makes you lightheaded and dizzy in a way that almost feels like an adventure is imminent. But beware, a stray gust might just sweep away your hat. Goodbye, fancy tricorn. How very tragic.
Now, as the sun begins setting, casting glimmers across the water like liquid gold, all you can think about is escaping this ship. Not because you don't like it, but because the allure of freedom is just too enchanting. While your famed compatriots are unloading opulent goods, you are left with a gnawing feeling in your stomach, which resembles hunger, but could be classified more as charming desperation. Will you ever be able to enjoy one meal without fearing it's your last of steamed dumplings, covertly baked in a back alley? The desperation grows as you contemplate the delicate balance of waiting for trade, while wondering if your next meal might just be a really unappetizing bowl of fish heads. Not the best way to end the day. So, as the sun sets and the vibrant market mellows into a dreamy lull, you lay back, staring at the twilight sky. Amidst the laughter and occasional outbursts of frustration echoing in the harbor, you can't help but laugh silently to yourself, pondering how the richest empire on earth is grappling not just with trade, but also with a single reluctant flower. Yes, you heard that right, but we'll get to that later. After all, what could be more humorous than a thriving trade kingdom riding on the back of one tiny, delicate flower? As twilight envelops you, you can drift into dreams, wondering if the next day might bring new adventures, or just more merchants who seem either dramatically successful or desperately confused. All while surrounded by the most aromatic scents, the world's finest goods, and yet a strange compulsion to reconsider your career choices. Isn't history a wild ride?
Chapter 3, The Great Economic Showdown, A Flower's Folly. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mildly Interesting History. Tonight we dive into something as complex as trying to untangle your headphones after shoving them into your pocket. The spectacular rise and fall of an empire fueled by a flower. Yes, you heard that right, a flower of all things. What could be more absurdly relaxing than contemplating a colossal empire crumbling like an overbaked cookie due to a mere botanical whim? So, as you settle in, I encourage you to grab your comfiest blanket and find that perfect sweet spot on your couch, the one that feels like you're being hugged by a cloud. Maybe dim those lights, because who needs illumination when you can be gently lulled into dreams like a panda sleeping off a full belly of bamboo? And if what you hear tickles your fancy, do consider liking, subscribing, and commenting. But only if you genuinely enjoy it. No pressure. I mean, we're not counting likes like an overzealous baker counts how many cookies are left in the jar. Now, let's ponder the life of an imperial tea inspector in 1800s China. Was their job mainly about sipping various blends and judging which warms the soul best? Did they ever miss the mark and suggest a blend that left the emperor grimacing like a cat confronted with a bathtub? And did they ever think to themselves, why couldn't I have been born an ostrich? All that running, no tea drinking responsibilities. Congratulations! You've just woken up in a sumptuous room of the Forbidden City, surrounded by golden drapes and intricate wooden screens, where the air is thick with incense that smells like it traveled through time to find you. It's the year 1800, and you're part of the Qing dynasty. You're strutting around like a peacock in a confetti factory. To your left, an armored guard peers at you with all the enthusiasm of a rock contemplating existential dread. Lovely. Picture this. You're looking at an old world map where China is flexing its economic muscles like a bodybuilder in a V-neck shirt, producing 1/3 of the world's goods: tea, silk, porcelain, everything that could make a European merchant drool more than a toddler facing a cookie jar on a Sunday afternoon. Meanwhile, China considers Western kingdoms as quaint little sideshows, akin to that one hipster cafe that serves burnt toast and charges you for the experience of atmosphere. Ah, the Chinese emperor. Yes, he operates from a throne cushioned with the finest silks, dismissing Western merchants as little more than errant children throwing crayons around a masterful canvas. Can you picture a grand hall echoing with the sound of dismissals? Do bring me another cup of tea. Oh, and the silly Europeans are here again. Let's pretend we're busy. If they bring a peacock, we may entertain them. The emperor looks down on these trade endeavors with all the excitement of a cat watching paint dry. His disposition is decidedly reflexive, like someone who has just rolled their eyes at the neighbor's raucous barbecue. Meanwhile, the wealth of China surpasses the collective savings of every squirrel in the local park, amassing power and influence that is practically palpable. The emperor is comfortably seated atop a throne of power, harvesting the wealth of nations as if he's sorting through an oversized collection of rare stamps. Now, let's step outside and explore this bustling marketplace. Imagine being bombarded by merchants shouting louder than a dog in a neighborhood cat convention. Here, they peddle their wares like caffeinated raccoons, showcasing silks that shimmer under the sun like 1,000 tiny butterflies doing a coordinated dance routine. The overwhelming scents of spices fill the air, tickling your nostrils, as though someone's uncle tried to bring home their fishy souvenir. You're surrounded by essentials, such as tea that could warm your soul or silk that could give you a bountiful wardrobe. But let's not ignore the absurdity of it all. Wouldn't a modern-day equivalent be going into a supermarket and finding 10 different brands of toothpaste, then picking one based purely on the color of the packaging? It's as if current marketing strategies were yesterday's whimsical imperial announcements. Here is our new toothpaste. Try it with a hint of mint and a dash of historical misrepresentation. The merchants are desperate for trade, yet they are trapped in a tight system, doing all sorts of acrobatics to navigate the whims of royalty. Meanwhile, you sit back, sipping your jade green tea, and ponder if there's a flavors of life section in the marketplace where dreams and aspirations can be bartered. The sun slowly progresses across the sky, like a race car driver going at a leisurely pace, effortlessly illuminating the vibrant chaos of Canton. And with each passing moment, you sense the pressure mounting. No one wants to be that merchant who accidentally gets labeled distant cousin of a cabbage by the emperor's tea inspectors. A cringe-worthy title that takes years to shake off, I assure you. As the market winds down, you begin to realize the exquisite absurdity of it all. An empire capable of cornering the world's trade, enthralled by the simple allure of a flowering plant. Ah, yes, wealth fought over, alliances forged, all because of a flower. You can't make this up. So here you are, drifting through this rich tapestry of history, amidst a complex interplay of silk, spice, and incredible absurdity, pondering the fate of an empire brought low by botanical whims. Not a bad way to fall asleep, wouldn't you agree? The world might be indeed a complicated place, but tonight at least, it's mildly interesting. For better or for worse, sweet dreams await. Chapter 4. Silver Linings and Dockside Shenanigans. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of mildly interesting history. Tonight, we're floating into the chaotic world of trade, where fortunes are made and lost faster than you can say, "Get me some tea." We're embarking on an adventure filled with shiny silver bars, bustling docks, and just a pinch of absurdity, perfect for lulling you into a state of blissful sleep. Now, as you settle in, I suggest you dim those lights, maybe throw on a fan for optimal relaxation. Because who doesn't love feeling like they're at a remarkably calm outdoor cafe? I mean, is there anything more soothing than the mild hiss of a nearby bug zapper? If that doesn't scream serenity, I don't know what does. Let's think about this for a second. What would it be like to manage a massive pile of currency? Can you imagine being the one in charge, standing next to a mountain of silver with sweat dripping down your back, hoping the wind doesn't decide to whisk it away? Or perhaps you're imagining asking your boss for a raise because it seems absolutely crazy that you're hauling around someone else's fortune just for a cup of poorly brewed tea. So congratulations. You've just woken up at the bustling docks of Canton in the year 1800. The air is thick with the smell of salty sea spray, mixed with the nostalgic aroma of damp wood and generalized chaos. A bit like a busy farmer's market that decided it wanted to go full storm at sea. You look around and there it is, a towering British East India Company ship, its hull moored to the dock like a grandiose pig, proudly bearing the world's fanciest bacon. Right now, workers are bustling about, counting bars of silver with the precision of someone trying to balance 1,000,000 jelly beans on the tip of their nose. Each bar gleams under the sun, nearly blinding you with bling like a disco ball at a dance-off between squirrels. Their goal? To exchange those shiny bars for something far more precious in the eyes of the Chinese Empire: tea, silk, and porcelain. Talk about being in the right place to cash in on an 1800s trend. You could practically start a TikTok about it. Now, why silver, you might ask? Well, the Chinese had their standards, you see. They were strict about what they would accept in trade. No one was swiping right on beaded keychains or vintage ceramic cats. Instead, if you weren't waving around a silver bar, you were as useful as a rubber chicken at a formal dinner. You could say that these workers were on a wild goose chase, except in this scenario, the goose was made of silver and worth more than your entire extended family's debt combined. This bustling scene is about as lively as a caffeinated squirrel convention, but let's not forget how absurdly precarious this exchange is. It's like investing your entire life savings in a single stock. You might end up either winning the lottery or crying on a park bench with pigeons for company. The tension is palpable. One little mistake, a miscount here, a misplaced bar there, could mean someone's day goes from, "Hooray, I can buy a yurt," to, "Oops, now I live in a puddle." Feel that? The excitement is electric, like jumping into a pool filled with soda, sticky yet thrilling. The workers, sweating and grunting, scurry around like over-caffeinated ants, stacking and organizing the silver into precarious towers that threaten to tumble with the slightest breeze. You can almost hear the whispered prayers of those in charge. Please, oh please, don't let one of the stacks wobble like a newborn giraffe. And just when you think it can't get any crazier, a merchant, his face glowing with enthusiasm rivaling that of a kid in a candy store, walks by with a cart filled to the brim with fragrant tea leaves. Ah, the sought-after treasure of the East. It costs more than gold, and here you are, witnessing this spirited barter. It's a scene so intense that it could make a soap opera seem like a lullaby. Will the tea be good enough to swap for the silver? Will someone accidentally spill it on their friends and start a silent tea drama? The stakes are high, my friend. But let's spiral back to reality a bit, shall we? You ponder whether, in the grand tapestry of global trade, anyone considered if this whole endeavor could have been simplified. Perhaps just a direct, "Hey China, how about we trade you a $50 gift card for half this boat of silver?" But alas, it's all in the fine print, and they don't accept charming suggestions. With the day winding down, and the sun slipping beneath the horizon, painting the sky like an avant-garde artist's canvas, you can sense the moment building toward a crescendo. The workers counting furiously and murmuring excitedly about today's deals, tomorrow's fortune balancing precariously on the edge of uncertainty. And there you are, washed up on the shores of history, drifting into dreams over the absurdities of life and the ridiculous nature of trading shiny metal for the simple joys of tea. As you lower yourself into that blissful state of sleep, it's almost comforting to think. A flower might have brought an empire to its knees, but it all came together over the clinking of silver bars, a dash of chaos, and the ever-elusive quest for the perfect cup of tea. You can't make this up. Sweet dreams await. Chapter 5. Merchants, Mayhem, and the Quest for Tea. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of Mildly Interesting History. Tonight, we dive into a world where the air smells of sweat and sea salt, and merchants are as frazzled as a squirrel trying to cross a busy street. Get ready for a story that's about as intense as your last Zoom call. Only this one involves ancient trade routes, questionable decisions, and a dramatic obsession with tea that makes your coffee cravings look cartoonishly mild. So, pour yourself a cozy cup of herbal tea, minus the questionable ingredients from your 10-year-old pantry, and do the world a favor. Dim those lights. Maybe switch on a calming sound machine and find your favorite blanket. Drape that bad boy over yourself like a majestic cape. You deserve to feel regal, even if it's just for the next 30 minutes. Seriously, who doesn't want to be a noble potato in a sea of potential slumber? Now, can you imagine being one of those British merchants, frantically trying to negotiate with the Chinese elite? Did they ever wonder if their suits looked too sharp to be casual, yet too casual to show off their wealth? Ever found yourself in a meeting and thought, I just want to be at home eating cereal while this train wreck unfolds? Or maybe you've contemplated, if you could trade something ridiculous, like your ex's mixtape collection, for tea, would it actually be considered a fair trade? Just how many silver bars does it take to secure the perfect brew of oolong? As you ponder these profound questions, Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1800 Canton, where British merchants are gathered under the humid sun, looking sharper than freshly cut vegetables, but feeling as dull as a butter knife. The local climate is more stifling than a tight pair of pants after Thanksgiving, and these merchants are sweating bullets as they grapple with the inevitable disaster of an unsustainable silver drain, all while eyeing the prize, a coveted commodity that the Chinese will actually fork over their precious tea leaves for. Let's set the scene. You can practically feel the sticky humidity wrapping around you like an overzealous hug from an awkward relative. The air pulses with the overwhelming scent of salt and sweat. Definitely a mix you won't find in your trendy candle collection. Merchants mill about, backs bent over ledger books with the intensity of someone trying to remember their grocery list after a 5-day vacation. Whether it's counting bars of silver like they're the last slice of pizza at a party, or frantically scratching their heads at the latest trade strategies that sound more like bad advice from your uncle than sound financial decisions. It's a chaotic circus. Visualize the sun's rays bouncing off the silver bars stacked high, blindingly bright, like you accidentally opened a vault of lost optimism. Each shimmering bar gleams in a way that says, "I'm valuable, but don't touch me, unless you want to trade your dignity and possibly your life for a cup of tea." It's like a high-stakes poker game, where the stakes are raised drastically every minute. The merchants speak in hushed, panicked tones, debating how on earth they'll convince their Chinese counterparts to swap this shiny metal for liquid magic. "Hey, have you heard of that new exotic flower tea from the south?" one merchant suggests, desperately attempting to catch the ear of his equally anxious fellow traders. What if we pitched it as sublime elegance in every cup? Do you think they'd be into that? Another merchant's eyes light up with hope. As long as it doesn't taste like a laundry detergent accident, we might be in business. The irony isn't lost on anyone. While the British scramble for ways to exchange silver for something less metallic, the Chinese are sipping their perfectly brewed tea, blissfully unaware of the sweaty chaos unfolding just outside. What a sight it is. It's almost like watching a puppy try to fetch a stick that's twice its size. Endearing, yet thoroughly absurd. But as conversations intensify, you can see the exasperation on their faces grow, like someone trying to assemble IKEA furniture without the instructions. Or worse, an Allen wrench. They discuss the ins and outs of this elaborate trade system, knowing that one misplaced silver bar could send them tumbling into despair, like a toddler losing hold of a balloon. If only someone could magically conjure up a basic list of viable products. And just as the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the dock, and turning the silver into a faded shade of moonlight in your imagination, a collective sigh washes over the group. Will they get their prize? Or will their fortunes wash away with the incoming tide, lost to the endless waves of eccentric capitalism? Tomorrow holds the promise of a fresh start, and perhaps a slight chance of survival. Yet tonight, as you drift off into slumber, it's almost comforting to think these merchants' quest for tea has distilled the very essence of human struggle into absurdity intertwined with ambition. After all, who knew a simple beverage could be the linchpin in a game of trade that looked remarkably similar to a frantic round of Monopoly? You can't make this up. Sweet dreams await. Chapter 6. A Ship of Secrets and Illicit Delights. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're journeying into the depths of maritime mischief, and I promise it's more thrilling than binge-watching your favorite reality show. Imagine the tension of a soap opera, but with significantly more opium, dubious ships, and a cast of characters that could make even Shakespeare raise an eyebrow. Yes, dear friends, we're about to dive into a clandestine rendezvous on the high seas. But first, let's get cozy. Grab that beloved blanket and wrap it around yourself like a burrito supreme of warmth. Dim those lights down low as your motivation on the Monday morning. Put on a fan, because nothing says relaxation like a breeze that's a tad too aggressive. And settle in. And hey, if you like what you hear tonight, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment, but only if that delightful giggle of entertainment actually tickles your fancy. Now, let's consider the brave souls of this era. Did you ever wonder if sailors wore pants that could withstand rough seas? Or maybe you pondered what sort of questionable decisions led someone to choose a career involving both ocean spray and narwhal encounters? What about those merchants scheming away in secret? Did anyone comment on how suspicious their moody mustaches made them look? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1820, beneath the bewitching glow of a full moon and the slightly alarming stench of salt water mingling with rumors of opulence. Let's talk about that ship, shall we? Picture it. A flagless vessel, quietly anchored in the outer harbor. It's the kind of boat that screams, "I'm here for the drama, and I didn't even need to RSVP." The only thing more suspicious than its lack of a flag is its crew, a bunch of shifty characters more forgettable than the mystery flavor of the day-old jelly beans in your pantry. Picture them whispering about chests of opium like they're locked treasures from a pirate's chest, when in reality, they might as well be trading in bedtime stories. As small, stealthy boats glide across the water, you can almost hear the surface of the bay sigh nervously. Perhaps it's hoping that no one will give away its secrets about drug smuggling. The Chinese boats skim through the waves, gliding near the larger vessel, each one chock full of merchants, ready to embrace the shadiest of economies. It's like watching an awkward dance-off, where everyone's too cool to admit that yes, this is definitely an illegal operation fraught with danger, and no, they don't have a backup plan if the authorities show up. Maybe they're even thinking about how many backflips they could pull if they spotted a naval ship on the horizon, their imagination swimming with visions of heroic escapes. You'd half expect them to shout, "To infinity and beyond," as they peel away. But alas, their reality is a bit more grounded. The air is thick with tension, and as the moonlight glistens off those contraband chests, you're left wondering, just how did opium turn into a commodity so alluring? For the Chinese, the allure may have seemed as sweet as a cinnamon roll on a Sunday morning. But for the British, It was more like that panicked late-night realization that you absolutely, positively need chocolate to survive. They were taking any risk they could muster to satisfy their cravings for this wonder drug. And while you ponder whether this trade feels more like a clandestine gala or a game of dodgeball at a summer camp, the underlying truth lurks beneath the waves. For yes, this trade is the precursor to chaos, a catastrophic collision of cultures, like mixing oil with water, or better yet, pineapple on pizza. On one hand, you have the British, sinking deeper into the depths of addiction and obsession, while the Chinese, through tangled webs of state and culture, are watching anxiously, ever so aware that their world is changing as rapidly as the tides. As the tiny boats whisk away their cargo, you can almost hear the collective thoughts. Did we just sign a deal with the devil? Because it's feeling a tad too spicy for my taste. This ridiculous exchange of contraband tea, sugar, and opium is only one leg of a much larger operation. Oh yes, this drama will unfold like a never-ending soap opera. But for now, as the gentle waves rock the boats and the stars twinkle above, the men trade their secrets quietly amidst the rippling waters. Tomorrow will bring a chill, a sense of foreboding, as the consequences of today's mischief cast long shadows over the future. Perhaps all your hiccups in life could be resolved by a few negotiations involving illicit substances. Or maybe not. Who knows? You can't make this up. So as you drift off to the lullaby of the sea, remember this: life was whimsical even back then. All that glitters isn't gold. Sometimes it's just a ship full of opium anchored in the night, a wild, humorous twist to the pages of history that's as intriguing today as it was then. Sweet dreams await. Sweet dream. Chapter 7. A room full of flowers, dreams, and opulent indulgences. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into a world thicker than your Aunt Edna's legendary potato salad at family reunions. Yes, we're talking opulence. Get ready to explore a layer of luxury that could make even the most lavish influencer's home look like a college dorm. Imagine a space filled with men of means, lounging around like lazy cats, while they puff leisurely on opium pipes longer than your last grocery receipt, in a room that smells like a blend of expensive incense and questionable choices. But first, let's lay down some ground rules for ultimate coziness. Grab your softest blanket, yes, the one that's essentially a wearable hug. Crank that fan to Arctic chill, and settle in like you're preparing for an afternoon nap after the brunch buffet of your dreams. As you ease into a state of relaxation, remember, if you find yourself enjoying this ride through history, feel free to like, subscribe, and comment, though I promise not to sparkle like a TikTok star if you don't. Now, let's ponder some wildly specific thoughts that will crack your very sane psyche. Ever considered what the rich elite do in these opulent dens of smoked dreams? Do they gossip about the price of silk like it's the latest Netflix series? Or do they stage elaborate competitions to determine who has the longest opium pipe, as if that's the Olympic event no one told you about? And how about their outfits? Is there a hidden competition for who's got the most ridiculous embroidered jacket? It's like a walking fashion show, but way less glamorous if someone has a little too much to drink. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1835, amidst the last glorious flares of the Qing dynasty. The air is sweet, or is that the opium? As you find yourself in a dimly lit room, ornamented fit for emperors, and your best friend's upcoming wedding if they win the lottery. Ornate platforms, each boasting enough cushions to sink your worries into a black hole of relaxation, are strewn around the space, forming a perfect constellation of indulgence. Take a moment to visualize. Thick clouds of opium smoke swirl lazily, making the whole scene feel like a dream sequence from a Mel Brooks movie. Laughter floats in the air like it has its own set of wings, and the mingling scents of jasmine and cloves create a heady vibe that feels shockingly familiar, like you've walked into a hipster cafe filled with very confused time travelers. Sweet aromas waft, inviting you to indulge in the art of forgetting one's troubles, at least until tomorrow's hangover comes crashing in like an unwanted relative. The men seated around you, more adorned than peacocks at a botanical garden, are engaged in discussions that teeter delightfully between high politics and gossip fit for scandalous tabloids. Imagine them, hunched over amidst a haze of smoke, pondering the pressing questions of their day. Who brought the finest opium? Is Lady Wu's newest dress more extravagant than a spring garden? Should they even care that a war might be looming on the horizon? But of course, they're too absorbed in the debate of the century that revolves around the latest vintage of black fungus soup. As the narrative unfolds, you can practically hear the giddy remarks between the elite. "Oh, how delightful! Did you see Zhang's new vase? One misstep and it might as well have been a paperweight." It's a world luminous with laughter, but tainted by whispers of looming catastrophe. A peculiar duality, much like mixing ice cream with, well, nearly anything, depending on your tastes. This lavish lifestyle often oscillates between bouts of merriment and existential dread, like living in a high-speed elevator that occasionally gets stuck, and all you can do is sip your jasmine tea, awaiting the inevitable drop. Oh, you poor sap, stuck in a chamber of material indulgence, all while ignoring the outside world slowly shifting like a tectonic plate. And really, did anyone ever warn these gentlemen that their affluent mornings might lead to a dark evening, with a flower lending its name to chaos? As the minutes turn into hours, the opium keeps flowing, and with it, a camaraderie builds that could only be rivaled by a bond formed over a shared Netflix viewing party. Imagine the absurdity of mixing profound discussions about fate with contemplations about who left their fancy fan on the floor, only to realize it's been commandeered as an opium pouch. It's comical, it's theatrical, and above all, it's so very human, forever checking social status while casually investigating opiate-induced hallucinations of grandeur. With each sweet puff of opium, the room thickens until it feels like a living creature breathing in quiet anticipation of the drama that is about to unfold. But for now, oh sweet slumber tonight, the elite remain blissfully unaware of the brewing storm outside their opulent sanctum, clutching their lush cushions and laughing vaingloriously without a care in the world. But tomorrow will bring a reckoning as frivolity turns to fallout. And while the air might be rich with fragrance, the ground will soon offer up a rather rude awakening. a gentle reminder that the light of opulence often casts long shadows onto the very foundation of history. And yet, as you drift off, remember, even amidst all the excess, life retains its whimsical absurdities, and you can only chuckle at the grand performance of it all. Sweet dreams await. Chapter 8. The Opium Fields of Unbelievable Decisions. Hey guys, welcome back to the comfiest corner of history, where tonight's adventure is thicker than a poorly brewed cup of morning coffee. We're heading to Bengal, India, in the 1800s, a time when the British East India Company was riding high, higher than your cousin's inflated ego at a family reunion. Picture it now. Vast green fields of opium poppies stretching as far as the eye can see, controlled by an empire that really thought they could take a plant party to an international level. Spoiler alert, they were about to trip over their own extravagant shoes. Before we embark on this journey into a world where one flower caused enough chaos to make an episode of Game of Thrones seem like a mild episode of The Office, let's set the scene for maximum coziness. So, grab your warmest blanket. Yes, the one that has that one mysterious stain. Dim the lights and crank that fan to mildly Arctic. You want to be so comfortable that even your pet goldfish is envious of your life choices. Now, visualize our charming cast of characters, a collection of men in crisply pressed suits, puffing on opium pipes like they're judging the next great soufflé. Ever wonder if they held deep discussions about whether opium could be classified as a vegetable? Or maybe they were arguing over whose pipe was more luxurious, kind of like the world's most bizarre pipe contest, where the losers had to take home the bronze, aka the well-used one. And what about their outfits? Were they competing for the title of most extravagantly patterned waistcoat? Honestly, the stakes were higher than your college roommate trying to outdo everyone at karaoke. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1835. The air is thick with anticipation. Well, and also opium fumes, because it's a real party and everyone is invited. The lush greenery around you whispers secrets it's been holding for centuries, although mainly those secrets revolve around how to sell overpriced flower arrangements to unsuspecting bidders. Let's take a stroll through this curious garden of gaseous indulgence, shall we? Imagine the sight. Rows upon rows of opium poppies swaying gently in the breeze, their vibrant colors teasing the unsuspecting passerby. They're what you'd call the Instagram model of the plant world, the kind of flower that knows it's beautiful and enjoys strutting around, drawing the admiration of all who dare to inhale. Now, picture the poor farmers, slaving away in the fields as if they were contestants in a never-ending labor reality show. You'd think they'd be singing while harvesting, perhaps busting out something like, "We're not your average flower pickers," but in reality, they were just praying they didn't get a blister on the palm from all that plucking. This wasn't exactly the dream job, but hey, fortune favors the brave, or so they told themselves as they harvested yet another chest of opium. And there it is, the dark, sticky resin, gushing out of the divine poppy like molten lava. Forget about those fancy all-natural fruit juices you buy at the health food store. This stuff was a concoction for the ages. destined to be packed into thousands of chests for shipment. The sound of chest lids slamming down was like a heavy drumbeat heralding a revolution, while whispers of profits filled the air thicker than the smoke in that dimly lit opium den. But of course, this wasn't just about opium for kicks. No, no. This resin became the currency of a whole new conflict, sparking a trade war that would have any modern-day capitalist rubbing their hands together with glee. You could even say the British were planting the seeds of their own demise, one flower at a time, like an overly ambitious gardener convinced they could grow a rose bush in a wet paper bag. Spoiler, it's not going to end well. The sheer absurdity of it all. Picture the British East India Company as some misguided modern influencer, convinced that if they just poured more money into their opium tea blends, they'd inevitably become the empire of wellness. And yet here they were, failing to realize that sometimes when you chase the green for too long, it may just leave you with a bloated ego, a few bad press releases, and a whole lot of international drama. As the company continued to pack those chests with opium, visions of grandeur danced in their heads. Maybe they'd convince a few of their posh friends that opium-flavored Chardonnay was the next big thing. Who could resist such sophistication, right? Meanwhile, in the far reaches of China, the Qing dynasty braced itself, unwittingly summoning what historians would call the Century of Humiliation. A lovely name, cozy enough to pull on your heartstrings, but really just a sarcastic commentary on how not to handle an empire. But fear not, our men of means were too busy counting their profits to notice that the very flower they adored was starting to weave a tapestry of chaos, like a preposterous plot twist that you never saw coming in a soap opera. Little did they know, as the opium snaked its way into the hearts of the masses, the resilient spirit of those being affected was preparing to bloom into resistance. And so, as you drift deeper into the lush, fragrant world of opium and wealth, remember that history has a way of serving up consequences on a silver platter, sometimes with a flower atop, pretending it's as innocent as a daisy. And really, how profound to think that a simple plant could shake foundations and bring empires crumbling down. But that, dear friends, is a tale for another chapter. Now, nestled in this dreamscape of contemplative absurdity, let's ease into the next act, where the frivolity might just take a turn toward the unexpected. Sweet dreams await. Chapter 9. Merchants with a Master Plan. Hey guys, welcome back to your favorite spot, your cozy, invisible throne of comfort, where the hardest decision you'll make tonight is whether to snuggle deep into the couch or roll off it for that last slice of pizza. Tonight, we're heading to the high-flying world of those dainty gentlemen in tailored coats, the Scottish merchants of the 1800s. Imagine a time when men expertly groomed their sideburns as if they were preparing for a major fashion gala. Spoiler alert, they weren't, and the closest anyone ever got was a heated debate about the best method for tying cravats. Before we dive into this tale of commerce that's more tangled than a bad hair day in a windstorm, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe drop a comment. Only if you enjoy it, though. We don't want you faking relationship milestones here. Now, let's set the mood for our next historical escapade. Can you smell that? No? Good. Imagine a world where air fresheners haven't yet been invented. Instead, we have the heady aroma of opium wafting through the streets, mingling with the suspicious scent of fish markets and grasping desperation. A delightfully unique bouquet that modern perfumers would probably market as Fortune's Unfortunate. Have you ever wondered what it must have been like to be a merchant in the 1800s, trying to figure out if your next shipment of opium would ideally fit in your finest waistcoat pocket? Or maybe you pictured yourself as a charming, wealth-obsessed rogue, desperate to outsmart imperial patrols, like that one uncle who tries to sneak his second helping of dessert at family meals. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the early 1840s, the golden age of shady deals and nautical shenanigans. Picture this: sun-soaked port towns, bubbling with excitement, yet also with more than just a hint of treachery. Here, you'll find your two main characters, William Jardine and James Matheson, Scotland's unofficial dynamic duo, spreading smiles and opium like it's the newest fad diet. Right now, they're getting handsy with their highly detailed maps. So detailed, in fact, you wonder if they printed them using the latest magical ink from a wizard's basement. Jardine's finger trails along obscure coastlines, dodging red circles that probably mean "do not enter," "danger," or maybe an ice cream stand. And Matheson? He's got a look on his face that says, "Today, we're going to bypass all rules of morality." And probably some actual laws, too. Imagine them sprawled across the table, arms covered in ink stains, as they discuss their ingenious plans to use fast clipper ships. These ships were the Ferraris of the sea, sleek, iconic, and apparently eager to win races against the slow, lumbering patrols of the Qing dynasty. They imagined these ships zipping along like caffeinated squirrels, easily gliding past naval patrols, leaving behind nothing but whispers of opulent dreams and a strong whiff of jasmine-scented deceit. As you witness their scheming, consider for a moment how their tactical conversations must have sounded. "Ah, William, wouldn't it be magnificent to slip our precious cargo right past those snooty Chinese customs officers? I suggest we disguise our opium as, you know, a shipment of fine Scottish haggis. Nobody's scrutinizing haggis. Who wants to go number 2 in the corner after smelling that anyway?" Their laughter fills the air, mixing with dreams of wealth and the occasional whiff of regret, as they toast with grimy mugs, claiming, probably falsely, that they are filled with Scottish wisdom. Let's not forget, these clever chaps weren't just clever, they were also dangerously, comically oblivious. A little bit like a toddler holding a matchstick in a fireworks store. A sudden thought might cross your mind. What could possibly go wrong? Surely the universe wouldn't conspire to remind these entrepreneurial souls that they were indeed wagering their fortune on one of the most volatile plants in global history. Surely, as the crickets chirp outside. Because in this era, it's not quite a dramatization unless some rural insect is involved. You can almost see the ship's sails billowing like lurid curtains, revealing a questionable performance on a grand stage. They draw up their plans, brimming with confidence, because nothing says "good idea" quite like gambling with an empire's health. all over a simple flower that would get scolded for excessive party behavior at even the worst college dorm. And there they are, dreaming of gold while contemplating the sheer absurdity of it all. Jardine raises a brow, mutters something indistinguishable about flowers, and Matheson scribbles furiously. Opium. It's a plant, but it also pays the bills. Isn't life just bursting with dreams built on botanical aspirations? As these two men navigate their convoluted schemes of wealth through the waves of ethics and trade regulations, imagine the consequences awaiting them. Because, dear listener, it's all fun and games until the flower known as opium begins to bloom. Explosive consequences, turning into a root of calamity that would send shivers through empires. But hey, what's a little chaos among friends, right? So as you drift deeper into our lively narrative of slightly shady historical adventures, remember that sometimes the wildest plots unleash from the most unsuspecting sources. A delicate blossom capable of unraveling a fabric of empires and igniting international tussles that send future historians scrambling for their quills. With our dynamic duo concocting plans for a trade that would outdo any modern-day Ponzi scheme, you might want to stay tuned for what happens next, since history has a talent for puppeteering ricocheting plot twists just waiting to put a sleepy giggle in your heart. And with that absurdity, let us turn the page and unravel more of this remarkably tangled tale. Sweet dreams await. Chapter 10. Hakwa's Grand Design. Hey guys, welcome back to your favorite cozy nook, where the air is filled with the faint aroma of history, and the only thing that's colder than the draft in your loft is the truth about how our ancestors lived. Tonight we're strutting right into the opulent halls of Hakwa Mansion in Canton, a palace that would make modern-day influencers weep into their avocado toast just from the sheer unfathomable wealth on display. Why? Because this mansion was overflowing with mountainous piles of silver and gold, shimmering as if the universe itself had taken a break from cosmic drama to indulge in some serious bling. Picture this: velvet drapes, fine porcelain, and intricate gardens resembling the sort of place where normal people would roll up their sleeves and start fighting over garden gnomes. Yes, here's your chance to mix it up with the 19th century's version of rich kids without actually having to wear pants or deal with their trust fund tantrums. So go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment that says something profound like, "More shiny stuff, please." But only if you're actually enjoying this kaleidoscope of history. It's all about authenticity, right? Now, let's set the scene for our delightful romp through wealth and horticulture. Let's talk about the best kind of garden. Imagine not just flowers, but one so extravagant they probably had butlers dedicated to them. Ever wondered what you wear for gardening when your gloves are made of silk and your spade is encrusted with diamonds? Me neither, but I bet getting dirt under your manicured nails was a trial worthy of a royal decree. Feeling warm and cozy yet? Good, because you've just woken up in the late stages of the Qing dynasty. The year is 1840, a time when fortunes were made, lost, and sometimes traded for a really good bowl of soup. Congratulations! But don't get too comfy. It seems like you're also a few issues away from experiencing what historians affectionately call the century of humiliation. Kind of sounds like the name of a grim sitcom, doesn't it? But don't let that stop you from marveling at Hakwa's abode, the richest man on earth, who likely inherited a fortune worth more than what your average cryptocurrency enthusiast dreams of on a late-night binge. Now, let's frolic through this luxurious labyrinth, where rooms are not merely rooms, but treasure troves of finery exploding with opulence. Walls adorned with murals depicting landscapes so lush and vibrant they put Mother Nature to shame, all while inciting mild envy from the average IKEA catalog. Yes, it's hard to believe, but Hakwa's home had so much gold it could probably be classified as a bank with a lovely address. If you squinted just right, you might even see the sunlight bounce off the gold-tinged plaster like it was caught in a glitter party gone rogue. Each day, as Hakwa sipped his jasmine tea surrounded by his wealth, a question surely crossed his mind. How could one man possibly spend such a fortune? Would he take riding lessons with literal elephants? Maybe invest in an artisanal turnip factory? But with opulence came responsibility. His fortune wasn't going to guard itself against the wild world of 19th century economics. So what did this mastermind do? He invested it overseas. Because why have local brokerage issues when you can have global chaos? Speaking of chaos, the gardens were nothing short of an elaborate catwalk for rare and exotic botanicals. Flowers that looked as though they were competing in a beauty pageant for the finest fragrance. It's almost too easy to imagine Hakwa addressing his staff with, "Artelle fleur de fortune." Yes, that one. While furrowing his brow and pointing dramatically at a particularly lush peony that probably demanded its own full-time gardener. The whispering breeze through those exquisite gardens must have carried the scent of riches, envy, and perhaps a slightly exaggerated performance from overworked silkworms. And don't get me started on all the scheming and plotting that took place in those gardens, with whispers of delegates and diplomats milling around as they tried to balance opulent flower arrangements with convoluted trading agreements. Picture diplomats treading softly. Even the slightest misstep could send them tumbling into an abyss of unfathomable disputes. Did you hear, gentlemen? Hakwa just traded 20 bushels of silk. For what? A flower arrangement that looks like it could tax even our finest artisans? Sounds mild-mannered enough, until you realize these floral negotiations would echo through the ages, triggering events that could only be described as epic, fantastic blunders. But as you immerse yourself in Hakwa's world and bask in the glow of his luxurious lifestyle, hold on to the sobering fact that while Hakwa's empire grew like some magical beanstalk, it also teetered on the brink of a floral iceberg, lurking just beneath the surface. After all, history whispers a warning, and this one comes drowning in blooms that could lead to complications even the best floral arrangement couldn't anticipate. So let's take a moment to ponder. How absurd is it that a single flower, nay, a mere blossom, could catalyze chaos that would ripple through an empire? It's like the universe's very own plot twist, reminding us that sometimes it's all fun and games until a petunia has its day. And so, our tale unravels amidst the echoes of laughter, ambition, and the delicate petals waiting to take their turn in this historical drama. But more mischief lies ahead, dear listener. Stay tuned for what crop of calamities awaits on the horizon. Sweet dreams blooming in this tangled garden of history. Chapter 11, The Great Opium Exchange. Hey guys, welcome back to your favorite cozy corner of history, where the air is thick with intrigue, and the absurdity of our predecessors is almost as dense as the fog on a London morning. Tonight, we're diving into a time period that's colder than that leftover pizza you found under your couch, the early 1800s, a time when people were doing their best to get high, and it wasn't just from the pollution. The scene is set in the fantastical world of Canton, where fortunes were being made quicker than you could say illicit trade. Yes, grab your imaginary opium pipe and join us on this roller coaster of tobacco and treachery. But before you check your notifications or scroll through cat memes, why not take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a comment that simply says, "Help! I'm trapped in the 19th century. Send snacks." But only if you actually enjoy this journey. It's all about authenticity, right? Now, imagine yourself as a wealthy British trader in the year 1830, standing on the docks of Canton with sweat on your brow, balancing heavy sacks of silver in one hand and chests of illegal opium in the other. Just picture it. You're sweating like a sinner in church, desperately trying not to drop a few $1,000s worth of precious metal into the harbor. Ever had to worry about your profit floating away? Probably not, unless it's a bad stock market day. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1830, where the only thing more in demand than a successful avocado toast recipe is opium. You're clutching onto your stash, sweating profusely because, let's face it, nobody looks good when they're perspiring like a marathon runner on a treadmill. The Chinese, having a magnificent talent for developing beautiful ceramics and vast empires, weren't crafting dreams of wealth built solely on florals. No, it seems they were busy navigating a dramatic, blooming crisis fueled by that most curious of plants, the poppy. Now, let's stroll through the bustling docks of Canton, a swirling mess of sounds that could rival your last family reunion. The clinks and clanks of shipping crates arriving in groups would send any modern-day stock trader into a frenzy. The traders? They're more secretive than a cat trying to sneak a nap on a keyboard. Amid the hustle and bustle, you hear snatches of conversation, many fueled by the sharp aroma of something distinctly herbaceous. Was that lavender? Nope. It's opium, making its grand entrance into the imperial market. Now think about this. How bizarre must it be to live in a society where your empire is literally fueled by a poppy plant, a flower once thought to be strictly for vases? It's as if the world collectively decided that flowers were too pretty to stay in the garden, much like that one cousin who shows up at every family event and manages to eat your last slice of cake. "I love your flavor of chaos," she says while delving into your stash like she's finding lost treasure. Let's pause to appreciate the sheer insanity of this situation. You have laborers trying to grow crops of tea, while sophisticated British gents think less tea party, more opium soiree. We're ready to trade bales of silk, tea, and of course a questionable amount of narcotics to get a grip on that shiny silver. Literally, it's like schmoozing your way into an exclusive club. Hey, I got flowers. You got cash? There's nothing like the sweet sound of coin jingling and garden blossoms colliding to make history unforgettable. You start leaving the dock, wealth swirling around you like it's confetti after a very questionable parade. As the chests of opium are loaded onto the vessels, you can almost guarantee they have about as much documentation as your friend's half-hearted excuses for eating the last brownie. None. Each trade was shadier than a giant oak tree on a sunny day, possibly prompting who knows what diplomatic consequences. The sensation of not entirely knowing what the heck you were doing must have been thrilling. That or completely terrifying, depending on your perspective. Amidst this chaos, let's not overlook the beauty of the flower itself. The opium poppy, the belle of the ball of illicit wages, was like the glamour girl of the botanical world, insisting on making its presence known. You probably imagined it swaying, donning a fabulous floral crown, and winking at traders as they passed by. Meanwhile, back in China, you could hear the ominous quiet starting to set in. Like when your Wi-Fi drops and you're suddenly left to ponder the existential nature of life without streaming. Hold tight, because the tide is about to turn. This exchange was a boiling tea kettle ready to explode. As foreign traders raked in wealth, the local populace felt the nagging grip of addiction tighten, leading to unrest that would eventually erupt like a poorly cooked souffle. Who would have thought that one tiny flower could catalyze quite literally a century of calamity? It's as if the universe itself declared, "Surprise! Love is in the air, and so is the opium." And with that you feel the weight of those silver bags, and the shadows of the opium chests loom larger than life, mimicking the tangled coils of this fantastical history. It serves as a well-needed reminder that our desires sometimes grow wildly, often leading to petals of chaos rather than peace. But aren't we lucky today, as we stir our pots of imagination in this incredible mix of history? Sweet dreams, waiting in the smoky blossoms of yesteryear, dear listener. More explosive excitement lies just ahead. Chapter 12, The Smoky Abyss. Hey guys, welcome back to your favorite slice of historical absurdity, where the past is more vivid than any dream you've had after too much cheese. Tonight, we're venturing into a realm so smoky and surreal, it makes second-hand weed smell like a fresh linen closet. Imagine a world where fortune tellers could have easily replaced life coaches, and instead of yoga retreats, people were flocking to opium dens. As we head into the depths of the squalor of Canton in the 1830s, I invite you to dim the lights and find a cozy spot, like that chair in your living room that somehow feels like an old friend, but is definitely haunted. Don't be afraid. Our guide is a delightfully unreliable narrator. And just for good measure, grab a snack. It's like upgrading from a popcorn kernel to a whole movie theater experience, just a few hundred years too late. Now, let's ponder some big questions. Ever wondered how many people can fit on a mat before it becomes a game of human Jenga? Or what happens when a dock worker, a former shop owner, and a Buddhist monk find themselves at the same opium den all on a Tuesday? Spoiler alert, it's not a joke at a comedy club. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1830, staring at a ceiling of darkened wood beams clogged with years of human desperation and smoke. Think of a hipster cafe with too much atmosphere, but instead of artisanal lattes, you've got a stench of unholy chaos. Welcome to an opium den, where relaxation meets absolute wreckage, and everyone's personal struggle looks like one long drawn-out nap. Picture it. The dim light of hanging lanterns flickers like an unpredictable light bulb right before a blackout, illuminating the faces of people who've sprawlingly surrendered to the comforts of addiction. Underneath the haze of dark and smoky fog, your fellow inhabitants are more crumpled than the leftovers in your takeout box, their muscles atrophied, their eyes vacant. This isn't a cliché hipster gathering. You've got wealthy traders, drunken dock workers, former shop owners, each one more defeated than the last, lying like poorly placed shuffling cards on rickety mats that could have easily doubled as exercise equipment if only they weren't swamped in opium. The aroma that envelops you is not merely thick, it's oppressive. The kind of intensity that makes you want to open a window, but there isn't one. Imagine standing next to that one friend in college who never showered and insisted that body odor was the new perfume. Except in this case, it's every human flaw, masked only by the fog of desire and despair swirling around. You hear the low hum of conversations blending into sleepy murmurs, punctuated by an occasional cough that sounds like a dying goat, a not-so-subtle reminder of their delicate existences. The former shop owner, once a proud merchant of everyday necessities, now stares into the abyss of his own thoughts, reminiscing about profit margins like an aging rock star reflecting on days gone by. Ever tried comforting someone by talking them through their bad decisions while simultaneously wrestling with your own? It feels a little bit like this. If your bad decisions also included a questionable choice of flour to medicate your misery. And over in the corner, the former monk who once dedicated his life to peaceful introspection and avoiding distractions is now slack-jawed and dreaming of nothingness. It's as if enlightenment took one look at this setting and swiftly decided it was upgrading to a tropical retreat. His noble intentions weren't prepared for the sweet embrace of opium's siren call, betraying every vow of sobriety he uttered. Imagine a yoga instructor falling prey to a donut, calming, serene, and wholly humorous in its tragic unraveling. You might think the surroundings couldn't get bleaker, but look closer. The mats they're sprawled on are relics of starvation, a mismatched collection of ragged fabric, more reminiscent of an unkempt thrift shop than a palace of relaxation. Every fiber is infused with the echoes of despair, a bizarre kind of history that makes your favorite old sweater seem downright luxurious. If you're feeling adventurous, don't bother checking for bed bugs. They're not just part of the decor, they're part of the experience. Let's not forget the walls. They're practically holding on to secrets like an overzealous gossip. Rumor has it, some of these opium dens were built atop long-forgotten warehouses, whispering tales of trade like an aging pirate, reminiscing about buried treasure. Who needs walls that tell stories when you can just wallpaper over them with existential dread and regret? Now imagine stumbling upon this place and thinking, wow, I should have taken that left at Albuquerque. Your second guessing transforms into morbid fascination, the kind that overlays intriguing chaos upon a canvas of ruin. Try not to think too hard about how nightclubs evolved. It's ridiculous enough as it is. As the night grows long and the laughter softens to cushy sobs, you realize that this smoky abyss is but a detour on the road of history, an intersection filled with missed connections, failed dreams, and a warped sense of relaxation. And while the world outside may be crumbling, inside this den, it's all about just one more hit of that dangerously delightful flower. A choice made 1,000 times over, until the night fades into a weary twilight. So, the question that hangs in the air is, in this haze of hallucination, who is the real loser? Those who sought escape, or those who never thought of it at all? A quiet moment lingers, and all that's left is light laughter drowned in the grandeur of human folly, as voices drift away like smoke in the still of night. Welcome to the opium den, where the thick haze of irony settles more than a quilt on that frayed old mat. And isn't that just richly absurd? Chapter 13, The Silver Shenanigans. Hey guys, welcome back to your nightly escape into the swirling mists of history, where the past throws its kind of wild party, and you're just stuck watching, like that one friend who overthinks everything. Tonight, we'll embark on a journey that spans the grand expanse of the Qing dynasty, a world filled with intrigue, wit, and a slight overflow of copper coins that might just remind you of your financial planner's predictions. Yes, it'll be as riveting as a 3-hour lecture about barnacles. Before we dive into today's episode, if you enjoy these bizarre flights into yesteryear, feel free to like, subscribe, or comment, but only if you genuinely find yourself grinning between yawns. I mean, we can't have you feigning enthusiasm like that one uncle who always insists he's doing the Macarena at weddings, can we? Now, find a comfy corner of your couch, dim the lights, and perhaps throw a light blanket over your shoulders, as if you're sitting on a throne in the frozen north, while sipping herbal teas made from whatever plants your neighbor is calling exotic. It's time to ponder. If copper coins suddenly lost their value, would you desperately try to barter using only your collection of garden gnomes? Or perhaps negotiate for lunch with the single best sandwich in town, the one that always eludes you? And what would you do with a singular glorious silver ingot if you happened upon one? Have you ever dreamed of how exactly you'd turn it into the life-changing fortune it truly represents, if only because the universe doesn't seem to get that we can't all be extravagant? Congratulations. You've just woken up in a late Qing dynasty marketplace in the bustling year of 1830, surrounded by a cacophony of sounds that resemble a catfight, only slightly amplified by the hustle and bustle of daily life. It's the kind of chaos that gives you both anxiety and mild amusement, as if you were to open a surprise packet and discover socks labeled Ultimate Comfort, except, you know, the opposite of comfortable. Let's set the scene. You stroll into this marketplace like the champion of awkward encounters, greeted by a dazzling display of devalued copper coins that have clearly seen better days. Picture them scattered around like tokens from a board game that no one wanted to play. No more bathtub-sized wealth here, folks. Now it's all about holding tight to your scant fortune while trying not to step on someone's toes, or at least avoid the stench of unwashed feet compounded with the aroma of damp vegetables sat in the sun for just a tad too long. As you wander deeper, your eyes fall on a Chinese Hong merchant, grumbling as he stands amidst towering piles of rusty copper coins, each weighing about as much as your overdue library finds. He's clutching a single radiant silver ingot, which gleams like a beacon of hope in a sea of mediocrity. Ever seen someone clutching a prized possession in the middle of calamity? It's like a cat dragging a dead mouse onto the kitchen floor, proudly declaring a budget-friendly triumph. The poor merchant's expression is stuck somewhere between "this isn't what I signed up for" and "why don't these coins come with a money-back guarantee?" Ah, yes, inflation. The economic butterfly effect that started with one tiny flower's bloom in Mexico and ended with the world collectively questioning their budgeting skills. Imagine the merchant thinking, maybe if I toss some copper into the air like confetti at a mediocre birthday party, it'll magically turn back into silver. Spoiler alert, it won't. The chaotic energy of the market feels like being on a carnival ride where the operator clearly had one too many cups of coffee. Vendors are proclaiming their wares with the fervor of people who genuinely believe that the world needs more dried fish and schedule-less trinkets. Try this. No, this is the best deal. You'll regret it if you don't buy it now. It's like attending a yard sale, but in an alternate universe where none of the items are remotely interesting. Across the marketplace, laborers trudge through their daily routines, frowning furiously over their hopeless wages, while you contemplate whether to invest in a full suit of armor just to feel safe amidst the chaos. Ever worried that shouting "Fire!" in a crowded theater might lead to true panic, only to realize that it somewhat resembles your daily hustle at work? Think of those unfurling copper coins, a metaphor for stressful workdays yet to come, spiraling down nowhere very fast. Now, as you stand in this market, take a deep breath. It smells of fried food and something else you can't quite place. Maybe that's your old lunch sneaking back up to haunt you. The clamor around you is like a group of toddlers fighting over the last cookie, each sound layered atop another until it becomes a rich tapestry of daily life, sometimes beautiful, mostly absurd. But lo and behold, out of the clamoring chaos, splashes of humor break through. The merchants are not just locked in a silent battle of coins and weights, they're also engaging in the most theatrical bargaining wars you've ever witnessed. Picture a drama club taking it a tad too far, as one merchant dramatically gestures, claiming that his fish is fresher than yesterday's gossip. Ever tried to convince someone that their lives would improve dramatically if they traded one boring item for your spontaneous idea of fun, much in the way you would critique a suggestion of thyme over oregano? Yes, the complexities of trade run deep. And there, that lone silver ingot sits in stark contrast, a heavy, shimmering reminder of the economic chaos swirling around. It serves as a metaphorical lighthouse for you, the lost sailor smashing into icebergs, desperately clutching the life preserver in the form of good fortune, all while friends are tossing around bad decisions that resemble devalued copper coins. So, as the sun sets over the marketplace, you look back and chuckle at the absurdity of it all, knowing that this tale of financial woe had its roots in mere botany, while making essential questions swirl around your mind, such as, why is inflation so complicated? Can you trade a silver ingot for a lifetime supply of pizza? And Why hasn't anyone thought of a better backup plan than simply staring at a mountain of useless coinage? Ah, history, a beautiful mess wrapped in silver, copper, and more than a hint of laughter. Chapter 14, The Waiting Game of Woe. Hey guys, welcome back to your nightly retreat into history, where the past is less of a tranquil lake and more of a bubbling cauldron of chaos, served with a side of irony. Tonight, we're diving into the late stages of the Qing dynasty, a time famed not for its magnificent palaces or refined tea ceremonies, but for the excruciating tension in every rice bowl. I mean, if you've ever watched a soap opera and thought, could it get any worse? Well, then grab your popcorn, because this is about to unfold with the kind of drama that makes daytime television seem subtle. Before we embark on this gentle voyage through the slightly soggy rice paddies of the 19th century, feel free to engage in our small gathering of like-minded historical aficionados by liking, subscribing, or leaving a comment, but only if you genuinely find yourself chuckling under the covers. We don't want any fake laughter here. Let's save that for your last awkward family reunion, shall we? Now, make yourself comfortable. Perhaps dim the lights a touch to evoke that I might be ghosted ambience, and find that cozy corner of your dwelling that practically begs to envelop you like a soft, overstuffed burrito. Picture it. Centuries ago, in a humble abode, you're nestled in with your family. The candle flickers like it's auditioning for a part in a horror movie, and you all sit around empty rice bowls, pondering the existential question of, what will we have for dinner? More air? Imagine this. How many weeks has it been since you've had a decent meal? Will you ever tell your kids, this is not a back-in-my-day story, but a please buy me groceries story? And amidst your worries, could that floral perfume somehow defeat the unyielding grasp of poverty? Spoiler alert, it probably won't, but it makes great fodder for an epic sitcom in this chaotic historical drama. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1830, nestled within the late Qing dynasty, a time that teetered precariously between cultural richness and the economically induced depths of despair. Yes, here you are, sitting comfortably in a dimly lit room that would make a cave feel like a five-star hotel. The air smells suspiciously of damp straw, mixed with the last remnant of dinner, imaginary and very much out of reach. Your mother sits across from you, casting despairing glances at the empty rice bowls that seem to mock your situation more than any historical textbook ever could. Let's talk about this delightful establishment you call home, if you can call it that, without conjuring images of a crumbling shack or an abandoned set from a reality TV show. The walls are nothing more than crude wooden slats barely holding on, showcasing the stylistic choice of maybe someday it'll be fixed. Your furniture has been reduced to a couple of rickety stools that probably have more stories to tell than your mother had time to listen to. Each creak is like a whispered secret. What fresh catastrophe awaits today? And let's not forget your family dynamics. There's your father and brother, two enthusiastic members of the Let's Smoke Away Our Problems club, clearly under the impression that they can blaze their way to success, or at the very least, into oblivion. How many times have you thought, do I need a degree in smoke signals, or just a healthy amount of skepticism to navigate this? You and your mother engage in a ritualistic stare-off, each of you wondering who will crack first in this game of futility, almost as if waiting for the universe to issue a finders keepers rule with respect to your domains of sour rice flavor and vague hope. It's like waiting for a bus that never arrives, except this bus smells distinctly of loss and reckless decisions. Every tick of the clock resonates like a marching band that forgot the tune, as if the world outside is spinning madly while you two sit there in quiet resignation. Outside, the streets are abuzz with the murmurs of vendors, hawking wares that could inspire chuckles of disbelief and horror. Ever tried to barter for scarce resources using only the power of sarcasm? Ah, yes, I'd love to trade family heirlooms for that lovely smoked fish. Add some of that premium raw air, and we have a deal. The rich aromas of fried dough and grilled meats waft through the air, only to mock your rice bowl. It's like watching a well-dressed celebrity post their luxurious meals while you sit here struggling to salvage the last rice grain from your sad little bowl. As you sit there, you can almost hear the faint echoes of laughter trickling in from the marketplace, where a vendor drops their prized possessions, a spectacle you can only appreciate from afar. Is this sorrowful state the universe giving you a good chuckle? Or is this just plain bad luck passed down like an ancient curse? You ponder the many philosophical questions underlying your empty stomach and raising eyebrows. Life is full of mysteries, yet none as baffling as why your family continues to play Russian roulette with your limited food supply, while partaking in a habit that produces more smoke than solutions. And that dynamic brings us to today's poetic crux. In the household of despair, laughter somehow becomes a luxury item, more far-flung than any tangible treasure. Who knew that amidst all the gloom, you'd discover the exceptional ability to navigate life akin to a poorly organized scavenger hunt? So go ahead, embrace this middle-of-nowhere moment, for in the chaotic embrace of history, we find the skeletons of humanity that dance at the edge of our own adventures. Each empty bowl, a reminder that life is indeed quite hilarious, even when the only thing cooking is the dream of a brighter tomorrow. Chapter 15. The Not-So-Subtle Stench of Wealth. Hey guys, welcome to another evening spent smuggling yourself into the book of history as if it were some sort of cozy blanket fort. Tonight, we're diving headfirst into a world where the phrase, "rich as Croesus," was tossed around like a weird compliment, and profits were measured more in opium than in cents. Yes, we're venturing into the late Qing dynasty, a time so absurdly peculiar, even the trees outside likely rolled their eyes at human folly. Picture it, America, 1800s, where businessmen in Canton were raking in cash faster than a raccoon at an all-you-can-eat trash buffet. Now, before we continue, I humbly invite you to, gently, smash that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment about how you once felt guilty for eating an entire pizza by yourself. Seriously, it's the sort of camaraderie we can all appreciate in this sleepy, torturously witty time portal we're about to embark upon. So, dim those lights, adjust that fan so it feels like a slight breeze from a pleasant beach, even if it's really just a head-on collision with your laundry pile. And cozy up as we contemplate the pressing questions of the era. Ever pondered how a single flower could unravel an empire like a cheap sweater? Or how opium trade could have been marketed as the ultimate wellness program?
Perhaps you're musing whether the merchants had business listed as a hobbies section on their Tinder profiles. We're about to explore it all, so buckle up. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1830, where fortunes were being made and lost over a whiff of something floral and intoxicating. Let's begin by finding ourselves in a bustling counting room in Canton. The first thing that hits you? The aroma of papers mixed with desperation, and the warm scent of roasted chestnuts wafting through the air. You see the merchants, sharply dressed in their silk suits, peering over ledgers as if deciphering the mysteries of the universe. Spoiler, it mostly involves numbers that keep escalating, like your to-do list at work. These gentlemen aren't just counting profits, they're rationalizing life choices like the best of us. If we don't sell opium, the Brits will. Might as well be us, they chuckle, taking another gulp of risk as if it's the finest wine. You can almost hear the echo of their laughter, bouncing off the walls like an unwanted ping-pong ball longing for redemption. The room is well lit, not in the "let's start a rock concert" way, but more like "can someone please change the light bulb" way. The sunlight filters in through slightly open windows, revealing layers of dust more thrilling than the latest gossip from the bakery next door. The dust particles dance like tiny gold nuggets, providing one last reminder that wealth is truly in the eye of the beholder, or at least the merchant with the biggest ledger. Now let's talk about this opium trade.
Shall we? It's like throwing a launch party for a product no one knew they needed. Imagine a time when wellness was synonymous with the small pouch of this magical flower, promising escapism, one puff at a time, while simultaneously unraveling societal and familial bonds quicker than your last online shopping binge. The merchants, as they write checks that could buy all the rice in the city, probably weren't thinking about the families left distraught at home. They're too entwined in visions of their own little kingdoms. And oh, how the British were involved. They were like that friend who always shows up at the party with the most questionable snacks, insisting that you simply must try them. Come on, just once. The British overlords dragged their own metaphorical block of cheese into this operation, while grumbling, "The Chinese don't seem to want our goods. Perhaps this funny plant will do the trick." Look, we can't blame the Americans for wanting a slice of the opium pie. It must have felt like an opportunity just hanging out like an awkward dandelion at a fancy prom. "Hey, buddy, you want to give me your lunch money for this flower-based magic? It's totally righteous." They rationalized, adorned in their fanciest gear while chuckling at the irony that they were selling something that would later cause enough heartache to fill a library. So here you are, half wondering if you should really be dreaming of fame, or if you should have seen the red flags waving like a cricket team during a match. The opium trade was flourishing. Profits were up 600%, a number so staggering you can practically hear it gasping for air under the weight of absurdity. It's not just a business transaction. It's a behind-the-scenes episode of a drama no one signed up for. Look outside, and you see merchants blinged out enough to make a disco ball jealous, high-fiving each other as they plan trips to places where grief over family legacy isn't quite so apparent. Is this how a dynasty crumbles? Over dreams wrapped in an opium poppy, fed by greed and dreams painted with absurdity? Seriously, you've got to hand it to them. Only humans could make such a quagmire out of life's struggles. Just imagine a lavish dinner party where stories are swapped about the latest batches of opium like they were the latest Netflix shows. They laugh, they puff, oblivious to the tales of addiction, poverty, and loss that quietly lurk in the shadows.
It's the kind of festive gathering that today would require a hefty parental advisory warning, not unlike that time you discovered reality TV in high school. A world mingling wealth and misery like a glittery cocktail, inadvertently topped with a sprinkle of heartbreak. Remind you of anything? So as our journey through this mild yet mildly interesting history unfolds, let's take a beat, grab a deep breath, and prepare to explore the flowering complexities of human nature where motivation often blooms.
Whether we like it or wish it would wither away. Chapter 16. The Perilous Poppy Parade. Hey guys, welcome back to our ongoing escapade through history, where boredom is an impossibility and sleep, well, that's just a minor speed bump on this roller coaster of absurdity. Tonight, we'll find ourselves in a land where soldiers are more anxious than a cat at a dog park, and where the fate of a vast empire hangs in the balance. Because of a flower. Yes, you heard that right, a flower. The universal symbol of a sweet-smelling love note was about to become the world's most dramatic assassin. Now, take a moment, dim those lights, and create a gentle breeze with your fan, as if you were channeling your inner emperor overlooking a questionable bouquet. You may be asking yourself, can a plant really bring a dynasty to its knees? Or, if indulging in a single bloom can lead to disaster, how many plants have I unwittingly consumed on Taco Tuesday? It's a fair question, and if you're anything like most people, you probably dream of a life devoid of existential dread. However, if your existence involves immediate worries about your tchotchkes, or if you should cook chicken or tofu tonight, fret not. You're just like the elites of 19th century China, minus the silk robes and intense moral dilemmas. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1839. The allure of the opium trade wafts through the air like an insidious perfume, and tensions are tighter than an overzealous girdle at a royal ball. Imagine looking out at the bustling Canton harbour, where soldiers pace back and forth, sweat beading down their brows, perhaps pondering whether or not this day is going to be another tedious episode in their lives. And trust me, for them, it's about as thrilling as waiting for paint to dry in an empty room, but with swords. Let's take a moment to soak in the ambience of your surroundings. The harbour is lively, filled with sounds that are almost musical, from the distant calls of merchants haggling, an orchestra of chaos, if you will. The scent of sea salt clashes with something distinctly more illicit. Yes, that's opium you're sniffing, brought over by the British like unsolicited relationship advice at a wedding. It hangs in the air, clinging desperately like an old relative at a family reunion. The soldiers stationed at the docks are often more concerned about what to do with this flower than they are about their next meal, or how to explain their job to their mothers. You may find it slightly ironic how a flower could symbolize peace and tranquility. Yet it's acting more like the drama queen of the plant kingdom. The emperor in Beijing, several thousand miles away, is finally waking up to the fact that this plant is causing a ruckus that could rival a toddler's tantrum in a toy store. News travels slower than a sloth on a leisurely afternoon, but when it arrives you can only imagine the horror on the emperor's face. This moment of realization is akin to discovering that the family cat is actually a secret agent for the dogs. Talk about betrayal. Now picture those officials trying to make sense of it all. All right, gentlemen, one might say, rubbing his temple in distress. Isn't it odd that a mere flower could turn so many people into lasagna-eating zombies? What's next? Are we going to categorize these issues under Tales from the Garden? The absurdity of it is almost Shakespearean, but with less tragic monologues and more misdirected intentions involving opium and rivers of gold. Back to Canton, where soldiers grip their swords, and there's an underlying tension that makes you want to tiptoe like you're in a high-stakes game of Twister. One clumsy step could lead to calamity, or at the very least, feed into the burgeoning reputation of being a walking disaster. You watch the officials scurry about like ants on a sugar trail, all while boats laden with contraband bob lazily in the harbor. It's a scene so chaotic, you almost expect them to inevitably trip over their own robes. And dare I mention the poor farmers? Their livelihoods have decayed faster than last week's leftovers. They didn't ask for this opium mess, did they? Living in terror while trying to tend to their crops, they look over their shoulders, half expecting a British merchant to loom like an overzealous birdwatcher, intent on spotting an endangered species. Alas, no haven is safe from this green and white crusade of chaos. Even your local vegetable stand here feels like a hostage situation. In this delightful conundrum of politics, miscommunication, and flower power, we mustn't forget the ridiculous expenses the Qing court is piling on. Imagine the emperor deciding whether to fund more fancy silk robes or address the issue of rampant opium trade. Picture board meetings casually shifting towards aesthetics rather than their decidedly pressing issues. It's like a giant game of Monopoly, where someone always ends up in jail for selling properties no one wanted in the first place. So here we are, while they sip tea and nibble on pastries, debating the ramifications of poppy seeds. A grand empire trembles on the brink of collapse. Yes, this will surely go down in history, one official laments, sipping yet another cup, as if it will miraculously rebalance the cosmic chaos of a flower. And amidst all this chatter, the silent soldiers watch, bored to tears, wishing they'd opted for a different profession, like coin sorting or being professional snail chasers. Indeed, the absurdity of relying on a flower to dictate one's fate is a level of irony that even Mother Nature would guffaw at. Let's just hope their dreams come with fewer poppy petals and a more hopeful path. Otherwise, this might just turn into a fairy tale written by a sleep-deprived bard who simply forgot the ending. And with that thought, the sun begins to set over Canton, bathing the harbor in a soft, golden light, a perfect backdrop to the chaotic opera of human ambition, failure, and yes, that pesky little flower calling all the shots. As we drift away from this weighty yet whimsical landscape, remember, dear dreamer, the next time you come across a flower, perhaps check for hidden motives. After all, history is just a wacky tapestry of events, many of which continue to bloom in hilarity and human folly. Chapter 17, The Flower Power Saga. Hey guys, welcome back to our comedy-clad journey through history, where boredom takes a back seat and sleep is merely a soft pillow on your lap during this whimsical ride. Tonight, we're diving into a tale as absurd as showing up to a potluck with just a bag of chips. A dramatic showdown in Canton over, wait for it, a flower. Yes, indeed. mere petals in a crisis of epic proportions. If you think your houseplants are high maintenance, just wait until you meet opium. Now, settle in, dim those lights, turn on that soft fan, and let the gentle breeze embrace you like an overprotective parent. Are you ready to explore the wild world of 1839? If your to-do list is more demanding than a toddler on a sugar high, imagine if it involved navigating the treacherous waters of illicit trade and government shenanigans. What if your boss decided to host a meeting about someone's over-infatuation with their houseplants? Or you found yourself trying to explain to your dog why they can't have the neighbor's prized hydrangeas. Absurd, right? Yet here we are, enshrined in the tussles of a flower that's managed to put an empire on the hot seat. Congratulations! You've just awakened in Canton in 1839. The streets shimmer with anticipation, much like your last attempts to eat healthy, only to end up face-deep in pizza. As you step outside, a procession unfolds before your eyes. Commissioner Lin Shu, a man with more moral rigor than your friend at the buffet who still tries to maintain a salad balance. He's been ducked into a sedan chair, his expression as intense as that one person at every gathering who insists on discussing their latest diet plan. Let's take a moment to savor the sights, shall we? The air is filled with a mixture of salt from the harbor and something much less wholesome. Yes, it's that infamous opium, wafting around like smoke from a barbecue you didn't agree to host. Picture soldiers pacing along the cobbled streets, sweat dripping down their faces as they navigate this drama that is unfolding more swiftly than a catfight at a fancy dinner party. They're caught somewhere between concern for their empire's future and wondering if maybe they should have just opted for simpler lives, perhaps as sellers of corn on the cob. What's the fuss about a flower, you wonder, squinting as you watch the merchants, who look like they're about to host an underground pop concert rather than peddle mind-altering substances. If satirical portraits had existed back then, surely they would depict them striking ridiculous poses, readying for the grand reveal of the latest opium products, while neglecting the fact that their entire workforce is practically slumped over from the effects of said flower's nectar. And then there's Lin Shu, determined and stern. He might as well be a superhero about to face down a villain in a poorly lit alley. Only in this scenario, instead of capes, flapping. You have silk robes and a completely underwhelming assortment of swimmers panicking at the idea of this whole operation collapsing over a single plant. His gaze cuts through the tension like a knife through overcooked spaghetti, and you can almost hear the gasps of the audience echoing as he vows to eradicate this opium trade with all the passion of someone trying to declutter a hoarder's attic. Imagine the scenes that play out. You watch as Zetchu's officials flutter about, discussions forming like erratic clouds above their heads. "What's our counter-offensive plan?" one quips, twirling his mustache as if he were auditioning for the villain role in a vaudeville show. The others throw around completely insane ideas, ban disheveled merchants from carrying opium in over-the-top hats, or maybe introduce a flower community center. Certainly something just as helpful as those modern wellness retreats we hear about, right? The soldiers, meanwhile, look on, torn between their historic duty and the far more formidable task of trying to look serious while grappling with the absurdity of it all. Each one's expression reads the same. I can't believe we're standing here fending off the world's most dramatic plant problem, while my cat at home is having an existential crisis over a missing toy. Truth be told, If they had Instagram back then, those soldiers would be posting the most satirical memes about their current predicament, hashtags included. But we mustn't forget the farmers, those put-upon heroes in this whimsical narrative, trying to tend to their crops while their entire world spins like a top caught in an enthusiastic salsa dance at a wedding. They merely want to harvest their rice without paranoia and fear of British merchants barging in like uninvited influencers. Imagine one sweating under the hot sun and muttering, "I didn't sign up for this nonsense. I just wanted to grow vegetables." The absurdity is palpable, intermingled with a sense of universal frustration that transcends time. So amidst this playful chaos, picture Lin Zexu. He's been handed not just the responsibility of pulling an empire back from disaster, but also somehow ensuring that future generations might avoid using communication through over-convoluted, flowery metaphors. One officer, however, seems deep in thought, pondering whether this is worth more than a bad joke or a poorly set table with last night's leftovers. As you watch these historical happenings unfold, surrounded by scents of the sea mingling with smoke, remember, dear dreamer, this tale of human folly also brings with it laughter. Because if there's anything more amusing than an empire's collapse, it's certainly the antics of an absurdly fragile flower igniting a revolution. Just think of it. The next time you encounter a flower, ask yourself, is it just a pretty plant? Or is it hiding hidden agendas? And as the golden rays of the setting sun dapple the streets of Canton, melting the tension into a soft, surreal glow, let this serve as a reminder that sometimes history's absurdities are just awaiting to bloom into laughter. Much like that questionable fern your neighbor insists is an ancient symbol of luck. So let's float away from this curious episode, holding tight to the idea that in the garden of life, each flower can tell a tale, even those that spark inexplicable chaos. And on that note, I wish you sweet dreams while the night sways on in its comedic embrace. Chapter 18, The Opium Ultimatum. Hey guys, welcome back to our sleep-inducing historical adventure, where even the most chaotic conflicts could make great sitcom material. Tonight, we find ourselves diving deeper into the world of 1839, an era where everything seems to spiral into ludicrousness faster than you can say, "Excuse me, what's that smell?" Picture yourself surrounded by opium merchants engaged in a standoff that rivals a soap opera's suspense, where the stakes, a mere flower, or rather a plant, trigger an empire-shaking shenanigan. Before we take our deep dive into this aquatic pool of absurdity, let's get comfy. Dim those lights. Turn on the gentle fan that might just be your best friend tonight. And snuggle into your blankets like you're preparing for a Netflix binge of existential dilemmas. You might be wondering, what's it like to be a foreign merchant in 1839 Canton? Do you find yourself wishing you had taken an artisan pottery class instead of choosing a life filled with stress, drama, and illicit flower dealings? Or have you pondered if opium might be a side hustle rather than a business model? Perhaps you've even asked whether discussion over tea could lead to world peace. Spoiler alert, it cannot. Congratulations! You've just woken up in Canton 1839, a time when foreign merchants are trapped behind fortified walls like guests caught in a never-ending dinner party. The air is thick with tension, quite like the aroma of stale popcorn in the office break room, mixed with a dash of desperation. The perfect storm is brewing, and it doesn't involve a pirate attack, but rather the stoic figure of Commissioner Lin Shu, whose gaze could fry a duck on a summer day. The moment you open your eyes, the scenery greets you. Large, stark yellow walls loom above, cutting off the merchants from the outside world. You can hear the shout of troops rehearsing their best "we mean business" faces while marching in time, a little too disciplined for comfort. If you squint, you might convince yourself they're just bored gymnasts practicing their routines. But alas, these soldiers aren't putting on a show. They're here enforcing Lin's ultimatum. Surrender your opium, or face the kind of consequences that make your dentist's chair look inviting. Let's set the scene a bit further. It's like you have to navigate through an improvised obstacle course, dodging stern brows, dramatic gestures, and the lingering scent of burning incense, making you question whether they're offering spiritual guidance or just burning some really bad potpourri. You catch wind of prepared speeches that would give any motivational speaker a run for their money. "Surrender the opium," they chant, echoing in an almost musical, if slightly threatening, fashion. Meanwhile, the foreign merchants look like deer trapped in a spotlight, unsure whether to run or break into a spontaneous dance routine. And then there's Lin, Zexu, the invincible defender of virtue. If he were alive today, he'd probably be managing a wellness center, guiding everyone away from bad vibes and mind-altering plants while wearing a necklace made of, well, daisies. His delivery is fierce, like he's about to launch a TED Talk titled, "Why Flowers Shouldn't Do This." Picture him, robe flowing behind him, with every word woven in the fabric of dignity and moral righteousness, every utterance promising to take down this opium operation with the kind of intensity that leaves you wondering if he's auditioning for a role in a historical drama. Now, imagine being one of those merchants, pacing nervously in a cramped quarter where every corner could be a potential place to hide your precious stash. You hear whispers of rebellion against the emperor, masked under bewildered discussions about the latest trends in furniture arrangements. Because, of course, opium smuggling is no excuse not to discuss the importance of feng shui in life. Tension mounts. You can almost hear the collective "we're all going to die" that quivers through the merchant crowd, mixed with nervous laughter reminiscent of that awkward moment when you realize you've said, "I love you," too soon after a first date. Their facial expressions range from blank stares that could rival a fish out of water, to exaggerated gasps, as if someone just spilled tea on the queen. The message spread like wildfire: surrender the opium, or else. Yet amid this fierce atmosphere, you can't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. These merchants are fighting a battle over a flower, one that could just as easily be settled by a game of charades or a heartfelt discussion over chai. Wouldn't that modern twist make for a viral TikTok video? Didn't put your heart into a flower? Surrender your stash, or else. And let's not forget the imperial troops, accustomed to dealing with scenarios more dramatic than reality TV. They look ready to face the apocalypse, their expressions of determination battling with an underlying need to roll their eyes. Could they be contemplating their life choices? Do I really want to be here with a flower related to the world's problems? Or should I just choose a different career path that involves less drama, like herding goats? As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the fortress, you realize this isn't just about opium. The absurdity resonates through time,
echoing in modern conversations about social responsibility, questionable moral dilemmas, and wondering if the delivery of your takeout contains unspoken turmoil. The walls you're surrounded by are like the foils we all build, sometimes trapping us in a struggle we'd almost forgotten existed. So as you float through this land of opium and righteousness, let it carry you to sleep. Dream sweetly, and remember that even in the lavish collapse of empires over flowers, laughter grows, just like the complexity of life does, intertwined with oddities and mirth that keep us chuckling even in tumultuous times. And if someone hands you a flower in your dreams, remember, they could potentially be hiding an empire's misfortune behind those petals. Chapter 19, The Opium Odyssey. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy corner of mildly interesting history, where the past is as much about intrigue as it is about absurdity. Tonight, we find ourselves where the ocean meets an avalanche of freshly mixed chaos. A beach where 20,283 chests of opium are meeting their gooey, tragic end. Picture this scene like a grand, sticky party, and the guests? Well, they're the uninvited remnants of that infamous flower we've all come to know as opium, popping up like that one friend who just can't take a hint. But before we beach ourselves on this sticky spectacle, let's take a moment to dim those lights, crank up the fan to a nice breeze resembling a gentle sea wind, and nestle into your blankets. Are you ready to drift into a journey where history feels like a standardized test with multiple choice answers? Well, I hope you've studied, because you'll need to solve the timeless riddles of life in the Qing dynasty. Have you ever pondered how it feels to have the weight of the world, or in this case, an entire empire's misgivings on your shoulders? What's the worst thing you've ever had to dispose of while trying to adhere to an unyielding moral high ground? Have you ever thrown a party and realized halfway through that you forgot to tell everyone their favorite dish wasn't going to be served? Or better yet, ever had a moment where a runny nose prevented you from taking center stage in a school play? Now, imagine all that embarrassment combined with the fate of nations and some truly sticky business. Congratulations. You've just woken up on a beach north of Canton in 1839, an ecological disaster area and moral battleground. The salty air crisps your nose as you gaze upon the monumental scene unfolding ahead of you. Sunlight glimmers off the waves, with seagulls cawing as if auditioning for a musical. Trust me, this is no Les Miserables. As you take in the view, your senses are treated to the pungent smell of opium, an aroma so thick you could practically slice it with a knife, if anyone were allowed to approach in the first place. Of course, you're not in any danger. You're a spectator to an absurdly comical tableau where opium is being painstakingly destroyed under the vigilant watch of Commissioner Lin Zexu. Yes, him again. The arbiter of virtue on a beach day gone horribly awry. Lin stands tall, arms crossed, the picture of righteous indignation. One can only imagine what he might mutter under his breath. Why do I always get stuck on duty for the sticky situations? Meanwhile, the myriad workers seem to bustle around like caffeinated ants,
mixing the dark, sticky resin with salt and lime, which sounds like they're preparing guacamole for the most self-righteous fiesta ever hosted. Each shovel of opium could probably have funded a small village, and instead, it's being tossed into sandy pits like the philosopher's question. If a chest of opium falls on the beach, does it make a sound? Spoiler, yes, and it's a sound that echoes through the centuries. The workers are a motley crew of fortune seekers who initially dabbled in opium trade when the going was good, but now they're drenched in sweat, laboring like they're stuck on a reality show titled, "Who Can Mix the Most Unpleasant Ingredients?" The chorus of hammers hitting wooden chests sounds less like a determined effort and more like percussionists whose rhythm went completely off the rails. As they mix this noxious concoction, you might wonder what their banter sounds like. It's probably riddled with annoyance. I swear, if I have to scoop that mess into the ocean one more time, I'm joining a vegan collective. Who knew history's greatest moral conflict would devolve into workplace grievances? Spotting a fellow worker, you overhear him lamenting, "At this point, my back feels like it's auditioning for the Matrix. I didn't sign up for this level of physical fitness. Where's my beach vacation?" You'd think an empire's fall would come with a guest speaker, or at least an open bar. Alas, there's just salt water, lime, and plenty of misery. Now and then, a chest pops open, spilling its contents into the trenches, dark and viscous, like the world's most regrettable party punch. All the while, Lynn's stern gaze bores into these unfortunate laborers, perhaps pondering the meaning of life. What would Confucius do? Probably not this. Nevertheless, the sun shines relentlessly, and the moral weight of opium may outshine the sun itself, if one could count shades of outrage. As waves eagerly creep closer, lapping at the edges of this encoded chaos, the opium begins to wash out to sea. One might think that even the ocean is raising an eyebrow. Really, humans, this is what I get for letting you walk my shores. Here it is, a tragic comedy where hope is a vaporous cloud floating away on the breeze, leaving behind nothing but tangled emotions and a seagull that seems particularly judgmental. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, either chuckling or pondering the absurd absurdities of life, remember, if you ever find yourself cleaning up a disaster, just think about those workers. Perhaps it was time to rethink your ingredients in life. Because if an empire can collapse over a flower, surely we can find a lighter side of our daily churn. Tonight, let the rhythm of history carry you into the gentle embrace of sleep, where the rivers of time flow with both omens and punchlines. And if you dream of beaches, sticky substances, or secret opiums, that's on you. But maybe keep a towel handy, just in case. Sleep tight. Chapter 20. Lessons in Petulance. Hey guys, welcome back to another delightful night of mildly interesting history. Tonight, we dive into a world more tangled than your earbuds after they've spent too long in your pocket. Yes, we're journeying to the early 1800s, a time when the air was filled with opulent dreams, unfortunate limitations, and a particular flower that may have caused more scandal than an internet meme about pineapple on pizza. But first, do me a favor. Grab a blanket and a soothing sip of whatever liquid you fancy. Tea, coffee, or even a glass of suspiciously sweet lemonade. Just don't ask what's floating in it. Are you comfy? Great. Let's dim those lights and tap into the whimsical chaos of a bygone era, where politicians were basically toddlers in fancy jackets throwing tantrums over their favorite toys. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be scolded by someone with a hairstyle that could only be described as Victorian porcupine? Or what it feels like to be the subject of a political cartoon aimed at someone wearing a coat with more fabric than a theater curtain? Ever found yourself wishing your boisterous neighbor would just simmer down after launching a dramatic discourse on the age of their pet cactus? Well, that's a fraction of what the British Parliament faced as they bickered over China, opium, and one cranky lord with a serious bee in his bonnet. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1840 London, and things are about to get hilariously sticky. The year is bustling. The British Empire is somewhere in the middle of a high-stakes poker game, where the stakes include not just their titles, but also the literal substance they're calling legitimate property. You're in Lord Palmerston's office, painted a distinguished shade of attempting to look impressive. The air is thick with tension. Think of a pot full of boiling water, but with many more political egos at stake. Imagine the scene. Papers strewn about like a toddler's failed attempt at art. Ink pots teetering on the edge of desks, and the scents of old leather, ink, and a stray whiff of questionable cologne that someone clearly overestimated. Lord Palmerston is pacing like a lion in a particularly cramped cage, hurling accusations towards a parliament filled with other stiff-lipped gentlemen, and a few unfortunate souls discreetly checking their watch, desperate for tea. "Gentlemen!" he bellows, his voice echoing off the walls like an overdramatic actor delivering a particularly gripping monologue. "We must teach China a lesson. How dare they interfere with our legitimate opium trade, without so much as a hint of social decorum?" You can practically hear a monocle pop off someone's face at the mention of decorum, a term best left for an era that's now beginning to leave them behind like old laundry. Let's take a moment to visualize this. There's Palmerston, looking more furious than a cat that's just had its tail stepped on, emphasizing the point with gestures that would make Shakespeare nod in approval. Perhaps he's channeling that time in school when he had to endure the embarrassment of getting scolded in front of the entire class because he accidentally spilled ink all over his friend's hat. You know what I mean. Relatable moments in history when decorum goes out the window and you're left clutching your book bag, praying the ground will swallow you whole. As he rants, the MPs seem less like the dignified gentlemen history depicts and more like a bunch of unprepared actors trying to remember their lines. "What do we say to the Chinese?" one hapless fellow mumbles. "Should we send them an angry letter? I mean, are we allowed to start wars over flower petal disagreements?" And just like that, the concept of diplomacy turns into a board game of
How loud can we yell at each other before someone actually makes a decision? The absurdity reaches a peak when a young aide trips over a pile of papers, sending a wave of scrolls cascading through the room like confetti at a particularly melancholy celebration. Now, let's make a quick comparison to the modern-day drama. All this over a flower, folks. People get heated over sports teams, social media posts, and whether to wear socks with sandals. But can you imagine an entire empire crumbling because someone dared to say no to your supply of pretty petals? Oh no, my delightful opium? How rude! Someone fetch me my monocle immediately. As the debate rages, you can only picture the reaction of the common folk. They must have been left scratching their heads in confusion, wondering why every time the upper crust got a whiff of rebellion, their entire lives hung in the balance of, yes, you guessed it, a flower. It's like tuning into a soap opera where the lead character discovers that their family's secret is not merely scandalous, but linked to the cultivation of the world's most pervasive flower. And then, just like that, through the haze of political fervor, a voice pops up asking, "What about biscuits?" Which sends the room into a frenzy over who has the best biscuits available in Britain. Because, as history would tell us, sometimes the best solutions come when you're all in agreement over tea and pastries. So as you settle into your pillows tonight, consider the dubious battles fought over flowers, biscuits, and powdered wigs, and know that you're part of a long tradition of humanity's eternal quest for a cup of tea and a biscuit, one sweet, disastrous moment at a time. Rest easy, dear listener, for the world may be made of chaos and flowers, but you can drift off knowing it's all just wonderfully absurd. Chapter 21. The Day the Waves Brought Business Casual. Hey guys, welcome back to another whimsical night of mildly interesting history. Tonight, we're diving into an era more turbulent than a toddler on a sugar high. The early 1800s, where colonial ambitions, opium, and one very irritable flower came together to form a cocktail of chaos so potent it might make your Aunt Edna's rum punch seem tame by comparison. But before we embark on this journey, I invite you to grab a blanket thicker than your last date's excuses and sip on a refreshing drink. Be it tea, coffee, or something far more mischievous. I won't judge, but I might avoid any floating objects. Are you snug? Perfect. Let's dim those lights and prepare for a foray into a time when politics was as messy as your dual-carb dinner choices, and just as catastrophic. Have you ever wondered what it's like to wake up and find the very oceans your ancestors fished in are now packed with ironclad ships that look like bad decisions on steroids? Or how about dealing with a sudden influx of people who think your favorite flower is a legitimate reason to start a war? Picture this. You're just trying to enjoy a quiet morning, contemplating your existence, and suddenly there's a party of British ships arriving like they just won the lottery on the Most Inappropriate Timing Award. What do you even do? Scatter? Attempt to negotiate while wearing your least questionable outfit? Congratulations. You've just woken up in Dingai, 1840. The sun rises slowly over the horizon, its golden light glimmering off the expansive ocean, ultimately illuminating a sight more shocking than finding your favorite socks in the laundry. British warships, including the iron-hulled Nemesis, making their grand entrance like they own the place. Oh wait, they kinda do.
The quiet fishing village, bustling with the anticipation of a lovely day filled with fishing and gossip about the neighbor's goat, is suddenly gripped by the approaching dread that sounds like the clattering of cannonballs hitting the ocean floor. The air is thick, heavy with salt and the pungent scent of fish, mixed, of course, with the mild terror of impending doom. Imagine, if you will, the chaos as fishermen drop their nets mid-cast, launching themselves from boats into the water with all the grace of a startled dolphin. Splashes echo like a disjointed symphony as they scramble toward shore, suddenly very interested in the brickwork of their homes. Let's be honest. Living in a small fishing village generally means your biggest worry is what to do with that batch of questionable fish stew from last week. But now you're facing waves of foreign dudes in stiff uniforms waving their cannons around like they just got back from an overzealous game of capture the flag. While you're wondering if you should hurl a fish at them or offer them a cup of tea, because what else do you do when faced with an armored ship? What the villagers probably didn't know, as they plunged deeper into a panic headache, was that the British government felt remarkably validated in their endeavors. Ah yes, the British Empire had its sights set firmly on forcing, or maybe I should say, gently persuading, China into accepting their trade of opium. And over what? A flower. The good old opium poppy decided to throw a wrench in the gears, much like the time you miscalculated your laundry's gentle cycle and ended up with a fabric softener explosion. The Brits believed in making this trade work, and they weren't above involving a few jarringly uncomfortable naval ships to ensure they have the upper hand. As you, the hapless villager, ponder about whether your neighbor's fish-smelling cape can double as a flag of surrender, the Brits on the Nemesis are discussing diplomatic strategies more tedious than sitting through a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation on how to properly arrange your sock drawer. Dressed in their crisply tailored military uniforms that probably took more time and fabric to construct than 3 entire fishing outfits combined, they deemed this whole flower thing a matter of national importance. Can you imagine the meeting where someone stood up and went, "Gentlemen, I believe we're at war over a pretty petal"? That's the kind of plot twist you only find in terrible reality TV shows. Meanwhile, a broad-shouldered captain points grandly toward the shoreline, blustering orders to his crew while they practically trip over their own polished boots. And you've got to wonder if maybe tea time was a better option than menacingly flexing their cannons. Why not arm wrestle for it? A robust round of rock, paper, scissors would be way less traumatic and save them all from potential embarrassment later. Back in Dingai, the villagers must have felt like extras in a really absurd historical drama. Shouts echoed as children clung to their mothers, and a dog whined in pure confusion. One villager, bless their soul, likely looked at the ships and asked the pressing question, "Do we have the Wi-Fi password for that thing?" It's the sort of absurdity that's downright relatable, isn't it? So, as you nestle deeper into your pillows tonight, consider the sheer chaos over commerce, politics, and a single flower that had everyone thinking it was time to war. Just remember, it once took a naval fleet to resolve a misunderstanding that could have easily been avoided with a good old-fashioned tea party. Rest easy, dear listener, for amidst the madness of history, we find a lesson. Unless, of course, you have a serious dislike for petals, in which case, Good luck getting a real estate agent for the next 5 decades. Sweet dreams.
Chapter 22. The unexpected explosive reunion of wood and iron.
Hey guys, welcome to another delightful evening of mildly interesting history, where we peel back the layers of time like an overly ambitious onion at a culinary school. Tonight, our tale is richer than a medieval banquet. Yes, I'm talking steaming pots of dubious substances, questionable meats, and more spices than you can shake a wooden spoon at. So settle in, grab that snack you keep hiding in the back of your cupboard, and prepare your ears for the riveting saga of a particular flower that kicked off more drama than a soap opera marathon. Now, before we dive into the chaos of the early 1800s, dare I ask, ever woken up to find that the delivery driver dropped your online shopping haul in the wrong neighborhood? Or received a group text that made you wish you'd just turned off your phone? Imagine that feeling multiplied by 100 when you realize your peaceful coastal village is about to become a dinner plate for tense international relations. But we're not done yet. How about experiencing cannon fire echoing while you're just trying to figure out what to do with last week's leftovers? Congratulations! You've just woken up in Dinghai, 1840. The air is thick with the smell of briny sea and, oh look, gunpowder. The sun is rising, but the morning isn't promising, because the fabulous British warships, including their ironclad beauty known as the Nemesis, are approaching your peaceful shores like they're late for a very awkward family reunion. Don't they know it's too early for such blasts? To give you a sense of the chaos at play, picture this. One moment you're lounging in your boat, contemplating how you could possibly catch enough fish for dinner and dodge the neighbor's goat. Again. And the next moment, the silence is shattered by the booming sound of artillery. That's right. The British Empire decided to invite itself to the Pacific Ocean's party, and they brought fireworks, loud declarations of superiority, and a complete absence of subtlety. Rustling about your fishing village, the fishermen are having a collective meltdown. Imagine the squeals of alarm and flurried motions as they hop about, dropping their nets and flailing like they've just stepped on a bee. A man literally risks his life diving into the water more urgently than a toddler chasing a runaway balloon. As their boats rock precariously in the waves, you can only wonder, didn't anyone think to check their email for a heads-up? As the villagers scatter, it becomes evident that nobody wants to be on the receiving end of an explosive welcome. The Brits aboard the Nemesis are less concerned about tea time. Indeed, while you frantically ask yourself if this was a mistake, or if you accidentally wandered into a very confusing episode of Survivor, Dinghai edition, there's a crew of British sailors discussing tactics with all the charm and wit of an unsolicited guest at your dinner table. Let's take a moment to appreciate the hilarity of this situation. A band of British nobles, decked out in military garb that makes even the most outrageous Halloween costumes look normal, thinks they're ready for validating their quest for opium trade, armed not with reason, but with cannons as big as your ancient family cat. It's like bringing a bazooka to a quiet yoga retreat and declaring Namaste, but with more jargon about empire and less find your center. Meanwhile, the villagers, bless their resourcefulness, are trying to figure out if hiding behind their precious wooden junks or launching a desperate barrage of fish is the best defense. Who needs a naval strategy when you've got a mackerel? Am I right? It's the kind of community spirit that history typically overlooks. But that's the kind of absurd bravery you'd need if your neighborhood suddenly decided to stage an aquatic reenactment of a war. And then, behold, the cannon from the Nemesis fires off like a sneeze in a crowded church, sending wooden debris everywhere like an aggressive wood chipper. This is far more chaotic than any neighborhood barbecue gone off the rails. The villagers watch in horror as the explosive shell detonates against the ancient coastal fort wall, with chips of stone flying like confetti at a really poorly planned wedding. It's so loud it could wake even the most deep-sleeping grandmother. What people didn't quite grasp then was that all of this drama stemmed from a plant. A flower, to be specific. Yes. While you're dodging incoming cannonballs, the British are scrambling to corner the market on opium because someone thought it would be splendid to trade it for tea. If only someone had told them that shooting cannons into ancient walls might not be the best negotiation strategy. In the end, as you wrap your mind around the absurd disparity between war vessels and wooden junks, the truth starts to settle in. The last thing anyone wanted was a blitzkrieg over a flower. And yet here you are, surrounded by panic and cannon smoke, trying to dodge potential fortune or further doom, with fishing gear as your only shield. History is full of surprises, but nothing is quite as silly as losing your home over something that can't even grow in salty water. So, dear listener, as you slip into peaceful dreams tonight, remember that sometimes history teaches us to really appreciate the humble little things. And if a single flower could launch 1,000 cannonballs, perhaps our modern-day woes aren't so precarious after all. Sweet dreams, sweet dreams. Chapter 23. A somber gathering aboard the warship. The flower that ruined a dynasty. Hey guys, welcome back to another cozy corner of mildly interesting history, where we dive deep into events that might just make your average Monday feel like a regal procession. If that procession involved a lot of awkward bowing, topped with a splash of deep embarrassment, tonight, prepare yourself for a tale that's even more tragic than that time you tried to impress your date by cooking a gourmet meal and ended up ordering takeout instead. As we settle down into this whimsical world of the 1800s, let's imagine you've just found yourself on a majestic British warship. Smell that salt? Or is that just your late-night snack? Who knows? But hang on, because this warship is about to host a gathering that's less royal ball and more, oops, we've officially messed up our international relations. So, slide into the dimly lit cabin, where the tension is thicker than one of those cream sauces your Aunt Edna insists on making for every family dinner. Ever found yourself in a room full of people, wondering how all that awkward silence could just dissolve into the fabric of time? Imagine being surrounded by a bunch of Chinese officials, looking somber and about as cheerful as people trying to navigate a dentist appointment. What's worse, they're about to sign away a piece of their heart and an entire territory over a flower. Yes, a flower. Remember when it felt devastating to lose a cherished sock? Turns out, losing an entire region has far worse consequences. Picture it. The year is 1842, and you've just woken up on this warship. But instead of fetching tea and crumpets, the air is electric with unease, with a sweeping view of the South China Sea. You get the sense that whatever celebration is brewing is more akin to a poorly executed roast, where instead of applause, you hear a collective sigh of the universe itself. The British, with their fancy uniforms and grumbling tempers, are about to have a serious talk with their Chinese counterparts. Spoiler alert. No one is winning the "you are bidding farewell to your territory" contest. The ship creaks and sways underfoot, each movement like a sad reminder of this moment in history. You can almost hear the mumbled prayers of the officials. Please, just let this be over before we need to ask if anyone packed snacks. As the British envoys assemble, there's an unmistakable chill and a sense of impending doom, rather like unexpectedly meeting your crush at the gym. A vague tension buzzes in the air, and those who have to sign the documents must have shared a group thought. Why didn't we just invest in succulents instead? As you gaze at the elegantly frayed maps and meticulously illustrated documents, the only backdrop for this hilariously tragic scene, you imagine the officials thumbing through them while stifling nervous laughter. One must wonder what's going through their heads. Are they mentally calculating how many flowers they could have planted with all this energy? Or are they merely wondering what would happen if they stage dove into the sea rather than signing the fateful paper? The British officials, dressed in outrageously tailored coats that practically scream "we're here to take over," begin the ceremony. You can almost hear themes from dramatic soap operas playing softly in the background. Meanwhile, the Chinese officials shuffle in, attempting to hide their unease with brave faces that make you think they just stepped into an awkward dinner party with their in-laws. Only it's a party that's reinventing geopolitics. Your gaze drifts to the flower itself, an opium poppy, sitting at the center of this squabble. One might think it's a simple botanical specimen, but no. This flower is like the starlet of tragic tales, turning the tides of power and wealth with a single aromatic petal. As the British clamor to secure their prized drug trade, it appears they might have underestimated some key ingredients needed for a peaceful transfer of power, including respect, negotiation, and the sheer audacity to engage in conversation without cannon fire. Who could forget that pivotal moment in history, when a flower became the hottest commodity since sliced bread, or in this case, the very reason the Qing dynasty was about to plunge into what historians would dub the century of humiliation? You'd need a nested timeline to follow all the blunders. And as you take in this somber tableau of historical absurdity, a warship turned into an unwieldy dining hall, thoughts race through your head. Did anyone think to bring snacks? What if someone shouted "tension" like a game show contestant? You'd be in Palestine free trade, no teas allowed territory before you know it. In the middle of this, imagine the British commanders trying their best to instill confidence, rattling off majestic speeches that hark back to glories past, while the Chinese officials stare down with the enthusiasm of someone scrolling through their social media feed at a sad birthday party. The gravity of the document ripples through the air, heavy like that lasagna you microwaved 3 days ago and was honestly looking a tad questionable. So next time you find yourself mulling over why anyone would argue over something so seemingly trivial, remind yourself,
That flower was no ordinary flower. It represented wealth, power, and choices others made for you, especially when you forgot to ask if anyone wanted to be part of this international flower arrangement. As you finally start to doze off, let this moment linger in your dreams. This extraordinary mishmash of awkward naval agreements, clashing cultures, and that flower. A reminder that sometimes the most monumental events in history might just stem from the most delightfully absurd corners of our past. Sweet dreams. Chapter 24. Unexpected Bloom in the Shanghai Twilight. Hey guys, welcome back to another cozy corner of mildly interesting history, where the stories are as vibrant as a cat in a laser pointer chase, entertaining and just a little ridiculous. Tonight, we'll be hopping into Shanghai circa 1845, where the waterfront looks like a bad concept art piece for a steampunk movie that never got made. The Bund is lined with imposing European-style banks and consulates, complete with Union Jacks, waving like they've had too much tea. Picture people strutting around the streets, filled with a swagger that could only be rivaled by your uncle at a wedding after a few too many drinks. But before we dive into our seemingly misplaced flower power saga, let's take a moment. Have you ever thought about how totally awkward it must have been to live in a place where European powers were just waltzing around like they owned the place? Because, spoiler alert, they kind of did. I mean, how would you feel if every time you tried to grab a cup of coffee, someone with a fancy hat and questionable intentions was just hovering? It must have felt like trying to enjoy a quiet meal, while an animated history lecture occurred at the next table over. Ever gotten unsolicited advice from a stranger? Magnify that by several painful political missteps. So what's it like to wander the streets of 1845 Shanghai? Do you find yourself wondering if the local barista offers lattes sprinkled with high-minded political commentary? Can you imagine slipping on a banana peel and taking a tumble right past an imperial official who looks as unamused as a cat trapped in a bathtub? Let's be honest. You wouldn't last long before asking for an immediate return ticket to your comfy couch. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1845 Shanghai, at the edge of the Bund. The sun is setting, throwing golden highlights over the bustling quay with an air of majesty. Families are laughing, children are playing, and the rich aroma of street vendors' food catches your attention like an Instagram ad for the latest diet. And just like that, in between the laughter and games, is that undeniable tension simmering beneath the laughter, like a mischievous cat waiting to pounce on an unsuspecting mouse. All around you, the air smells faintly of salt and opportunity, and a hint of something less pleasant, likely the remnants of the opium trade drifting around like an unwanted houseguest. Ah yes, it's a beautiful evening by the waterfront. The buildings are a veritable Game of Thrones set, if all the characters wore waistcoats and had urgent financial meetings instead of engaging in murder. The air crackles with the excitement of deals being made, and every passerby seems to wear confidence as if it were a tailored suit, something you imagine is infinitely more comfortable than what you currently have on. As you walk, you witness a cavalcade of employees scurrying like ants in a picnic. They are business folks and diplomats,
poised with expressions that suggest they were given a 2-week notice before a family reunion. The British, in their curious, swaggering openness, a mix of entitlement and hubris as thick as the haze-born mist that rolls continuously along the water, hadn't gone unnoticed. Extraterritoriality was the name of the game, a colossal concept tucked neatly into a sprightly constitutional pocket like surprise cake. Except this cake led to a power struggle no one quite anticipated, except maybe the factory workers, who were now taking on flex jobs instead of nodding at the whims of distant empires. Oh, and the streets. They are alive with energy. Picture this scenario. A local trying to sell silk dresses, shouting at passers-by with all the fervor of a late-night infomercial host. But wait, there's more! As fleeting glances from foreign dignitaries suggest they're determining whether they like the cut of this cloth. There's a feeling of collective tension in the air, the same way you feel when everyone is watching a movie and you can't remember if you left the oven on. While the locals rush about in their attempts to maintain dignity, foreigners parade, strutting like peacocks in full bloom, clearly unfazed by the murmurs behind their backs. You chuckle at the visualization of a snobbish British envoy holding court under a lamppost, as if he were some kind of luminary philosopher. "Absolutely splendid evening, wouldn't you agree, chaps?" he exclaims to a group of indifferent Chinese merchants who seem to be eyeing the opium trade rather than engaging in philosophical discussions about the vagaries of existence. They're probably thinking, "Sure, splendid. Right after this trade agreement is inked, how about we talk about reality?" Meanwhile, the air is suffused with the fragrance of abundant flowers blooming behind the scenes. Some might be begonia, some might be sneaky poppies, the latter being a key player in a grand historical plot twist that even the best screenwriters couldn't conjure. The British want those flowers, and they're willing to tread lightly on the very fabric of the Qing dynasty to make it happen. Can you even begin to wrap your head around it? A simple blossom becoming the catalyst of international chaos. You'd think that after everything, we'd come to appreciate flowers for their true beauty, without all the geopolitical calamity tangled up around this riveting stem. In between hearty laughs and gentle jabs at this unexpected turn of events, you realize that sometimes history unfolds in the most curious and absurd ways. Who would have thought that an evening by the Bund would turn into a thundering lesson on colonialism and opium? Sleep tight, dear historian-to-be, for there are countless tales waiting to bud and blossom like those very flowers at the heart of the unraveling empire. And just like that, we find ourselves in a serene moment on the cusp of historical change. Let your dreams mingle with the merchants and dignitaries, for amid the fortunes and the follies, you're a part of this conversation, a blooming puzzler in the infinite garden of history. Sweet dreams. Chapter 25. Poppies Among the Peaks. Hey guys, welcome back to another dreamy dive into mildly interesting history, which, spoiler alert, is often more absurd than a cat in a top hat trying to play chess. Tonight, we're setting our sights on the tranquil yet tumultuous hillsides of China in the year 1875. Imagine it, if you will. Rolling landscapes blanketed not in rice paddies, but in fields of vibrant opium poppies, shimmering in the sunlight like a colorful rebellion against the expected. Now, I ask you, what would it be like if, one fateful afternoon, You were wading knee-deep through flowers that looked downright inviting, only to realize they were the very reason your neighbor's great-aunt was lived in a perpetual state of chaos. Picture trying to enjoy a picnic, while the aroma of questionable decisions wafts through the air. Are those poppies, or my life choices, you'd wonder, contemplating snack options while simultaneously considering a drastic change in your career as the local flower enthusiast. But before we immerse ourselves in the opium-scented clouds of our tale, I'd like to remind you to like, subscribe, and maybe comment, especially if this absurd flower fiasco made you smile. Because who doesn't want to share a giggle or two? And now, let's dim the lights just a tad. Grab your favorite blanket, the one you bought during an existential crisis, and get cozy. So, have you ever pondered how tic-tac-toe strategies would hold up in the bureaucratic mindset of the Qing court? Or thought about how opium poppies could induce an urgent existential crisis in the average middle-aged man? Is it possible that the ancient Chinese figured out a way to make a casual get-together feel like an indie film festival, featuring debates on drug policy masked as discussions about floral arrangements? I know, modern life is a wild ride. But hold on to your echoing thoughts, because congratulations, you've just woken up in 1875 China, where opium is flourishing like the weird cousin at a family reunion, delightful yet incredibly concerning. Let's talk about the hillsides. Picture the breathtaking slopes, lush and vivid, adorned not with humble grains of rice, but with those notorious, dazzling poppies swaying in the gentle wind. Each rich petal glimmers under the sun, and if you squint just right, they almost look like nature's confetti, celebrating, well, chaos. The bittersweet aroma spirals through the air like that ghost of bad decisions you thought you left in college. Your sensory journey might be disrupted, however, by the penetrating realization that these gorgeous flowers are at the heart of a shifting cultural tide. The Qing dynasty, that colossal titan of bureaucratic knots and intricate leadership, is feeling the tug of change as the white powdery allure of opium captivates the couplings of society like a street magician performing a trick that no one can quite believe. The flowers continue to bloom, unfurling as the promising harbingers of economic fortune and profound addiction. A combo that's like pairing a fine wine with instant ramen. As you stroll through this vivid tapestry, consider the farmers engrossed in their painstaking work. Dressed in colorful silk, they balance their anxieties alongside baskets overflowing with poppies. Are they humming the ancient songs of productivity? Or are they merely praying their only real option wouldn't end in a life crisis involving shady deals down by the river? The juxtaposition here is staggering. Tranquil landscapes marred by a thriving trade that feels like setting up a lemonade stand, but inadvertently attracting an angry mob of opulent investors. And what about those local merchants? Each day must feel like an episode of a wild game show, pitting their entrepreneurial skills against the entrapments of addiction that they can neither ignore nor embrace. It's like hosting a yoga retreat, but having the participants constantly stealing the blocks to build fortresses instead of achieving Zen states. Can you imagine bargaining while tiptoeing around the morose disaster waiting to unfold? Their life must often resemble that awkward moment during popcorn buying at a movie theater, where you try to somehow balance your ethical doubts with the undeniable buttery allure of an overpriced snack. You chuckle softly,
This is where paradox thrives. Farmers cultivate beauty, and merchants risk it all, both entwined in this strange, heartbreaking dance. Meanwhile, the Qing officials comb through the chaos with the same resolution as someone trying to fold fitted sheets, utterly lost and secretly panicking about what might happen if their efforts don't pay off. And oh, the consequences. Every flower harvested carries whispers of requirements and expectations that echo through the corridors of power. In the silence that falls after this wild imagining, an undeniable truth arises. These oppressively beautiful poppies signify the birth of an addiction that would grip the very heart of a nation, dragging it to the depths of despair, while simultaneously sprouting prosperity in unexpected corners. It's utterly beautiful in a one-flower collapse of an empire sort of way. Like watching a train wreck unfold in slow motion, yet compelling enough to keep your eyes glued. And thus, with each wisp of fragrant breeze, you begin to comprehend the tragic beauty of it all. You, yes you, are now entwined in this opulent tale of growth, greed, and everything in between. Sweet dreams await you, dear traveler, in this lush garden of history, tinged with humor and irony, where one single flower could cause it all to unravel. So sleep lightly, and let the gentleman of history whisper intoxicating stories into your ear. And now, as our journey comes to a quiet close, breathe out slowly. Let the noise of history fade into a soft hum in the background. Tonight, we walked through crowded ports and smoky dens, through gilded palaces and anxious merchant ships, through ambition, addiction, hope, and decline. We watched people struggle to survive overwhelming tides, some chasing fortune, some defending honor, some simply trying to get through another impossible day. It's easy to look back and laugh at the chaos. The merchants overwhelmed by tea cravings, the opulent nobles floating in sweet, fragrant clouds, the workers counting silver like overstressed accountants in wool trousers. History is hilarious. History is heartbreaking. History is human. And in every scene, one thing stood steady: the quiet resilience of ordinary people. Those who woke up tired, worked until their bones ached, hoped for better days, and still found something to laugh about. They walked through worlds shaped by empires, faced forces bigger than themselves, and survived anyway. One breath, one step, one sunrise at a time. Tonight, be grateful for small mercies, for clean pillows, for soft blankets, for peaceful rooms without smoke thick as fog, and markets where you don't risk getting trampled by a donkey and 6 crates of cinnamon. Be grateful for rest, for quiet, for the gift of another tomorrow. Close your eyes. Let your thoughts drift like lanterns on still water. The world can wait. Right now, your only duty is to rest. Sleep well, friend. Good night.